This is the MLW Radio Network.
Navy blue, periwinkle blue, teal and turquoise too. They're all blue, and so is he, because he's the Blue Meanie. Dun, 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 dun. Navy blue, periwinkle blue, teal and turquoise are blue too. They're all blues, and so is he, because he's the Blue Meanie, dancing around in his shorts. Look at him go, moving fast. Listen to him on his show. It's the Mind of Meanie podcast. Navy blue, periwinkle blue, teal and turquoise are blue too. He's blue too, so is he, because he's the Blue Meanie. Because he's the Blue Meanie. That is the new intro to the Mind of Meanie podcast. That was my tribute song to the Blue Meanie. Enjoy.
Welcome, everybody, to the Mind of the Meanie, your weekly peek into the world, according to former WWE and ECW wrestler, the Blue Meanie. We cover wrestling, music, movies, sports, and lots of useless knowledge, all contained in the Mind of the Meanie. I'm Josh Shernoff, and he is the Blue Meanie. And Meanie, today we have a very, very special co-host for episode 30. Meanie, you do the introductions.
I don't know if we're worthy. I mean, we have a very special guest co-host. We don't really have guests, we have guest co-hosts where they can just interact and ask questions and feel free and don't have to worry about answering the same questions over and over. But seriously, we have a star amongst us, Mr. RJ City. Welcome to the Mind of the Meanie podcast.
Thank you for having me. I would like to clarify I did not get a nickel for you using any of my music. You'll be hearing from my lawyer.
Well, I was gonna say,
you know what's weird?
You're going to get paid the same thing for appearing on the show today, so.
It's perfect. That's my rate. What is weird is that when I sing those songs, I do that when I do Coffee and Underwear on Sunday mornings, and people request stuff, and then I just make it up. Mm-hmm. But when I make it up, I don't retain it anymore. Like, once it comes out, it's out. So I'm really hearing most of that stuff for the first time and had a real limited recollection of. It was like seeing a video of when you were blackout drunk and whatever, and you're like, I have absolutely no idea. And then I was impressed with myself when I rhymed fast in podcasts.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, good job.
So I don't even know. I was looking up to find that so that we would have it ready to play. And I found this other file of you just doing like a brief that Meanie must have sent me.
Oh, as soon as he did it, I was like, oh my God, he did my song. And I just made my own clip for my own personal enjoyment.
Like, I guess you uploaded it. Maybe you just uploaded it to our Dropbox.
Our
and I didn't even
Dropbox.
know. So when I typed in RJ City, like, just because I knew that would bring up the one file to drag in, I'm like, what is this other one? And I'm like, oh man, this is amazing. So I'm going to kick off the show with that.
That's so, and there is definitely a version of me doing the WWE theme.
Yeah, it's probably up there. It's
from WrestleMania 2000. You've been really blessed with like some decent, especially when you have like, look, everyone's ECW theme song was great.
Yeah,
pretty much. I can't
mostly
think
AC/DC, mostly Metallica.
Yeah, but everything was like, wow, this is really wow. When you aren't encumbered by paying music rights that much, you can get some great stuff out there. And then when you go to, WWE, it was like hit or miss, the transition. You know what I mean? Like maybe, but you really lucked out.
My favorite was Stevie Richards when he was Superstar Stevie Richards and he came out to the theme from Jesus Christ Superstar.
It's amazing.
I was just like, that's a wrestling theme if I've ever heard one.
I was very fortunate, though, because we had Joey Campbell, who did the BWO theme one last week, and I heard that song when I was at Al Snow's school training. And I was long story short, I went to see one band called Black Eyed Susan, and Swamp Candles were opening. I wound up liking the Swamp Candles more, and I became friends, and we're kind of related now. His mom married my uncle. It's this whole thing.
Wow.
Yeah, and we didn't even know. We got to the wedding. I was like, what the fuck are you doing here? So, no, he was sending me tapes while I was at wrestling school, and I heard the BWO theme. I was like, that's a wrestling song. And then when in ECW we started doing the BWO, we're like, we need music. And, the NWO sounds kind of like underground, kind of like porno music. I was like, oh, Paul, I got this song. And I dubbed the BWO song into that and gave him that. I was like, please just play this. He's like, okay. And he plays it. And the rest is history.
The NWO theme was a ripoff of a Jimi Hendrix song. And I can't remember which one.
Well, no. That was that the main NWO? Because the lesser NWO members,
yeah,
that was definitely a ripoff of a Hendrix song.
I think it was both, but I also remember that Nash said when he did the house shows, they would come out to Ready or Not by the Fugees because that's what they really wanted to use. But Bischoff's like,
really?
No. And then there's that amazing clip of the one time Scott Hall was in ECW.
Yes.
And they used that music, and you're like, oh my, I've watched that clip a million times.
Useless knowledge. I stood next to Scott Hall as he tried to unpeel the CD, and he couldn't get the wrapper off. I was like, we're in Poughkeepsie, and that whole weekend I thought Scott Hall was mad at me. Like he came up, shook my hand, and I was like, hey, how you doing? He walked away. I was like, oh, is he mad about the BWO? I went up to him, I was like, hey, you mad about the BWO? I was like, no, I just didn't recognize you because I had lost 100 pounds, 160 pounds or whatever. But next night in Poughkeepsie, he's standing there trying to he's using his teeth trying to fucking get the plastic off the CD wrapper. And I was like, what's that? He's like, oh, it's music I'm using. And then I heard it live and I was like, holy shit, that's pretty good.
Kids today will never understand how difficult it was when you would be so excited you'd get your new CD. First of all, they'll never, right now it's you just download it, whatever. You can go on Spotify. You don't even have to download it now. You can just stream
Spoiled.
it. Right? But not only was it that we had to wait to have it ordered, and delivered, or we had to go to the store and buy a CD, but to open...
Or send it to a neighbor's porch under a fake name for Columbia House and then they scoop it up.
But to open a CD was really challenging. Like it never made sense. It was almost like they were saying, like, kids, now's the time for you to learn how to use an X-Acto knife. Like it was impossible to open
the cheap ones. Like the expensive ones would give you the courtesy of having those overlap flaps in the back that you could kind of dig with your finger and get started. But the cheap ones, the ones that I would say like Time Life would compile ones from the 60s, like the 60s, it would be completely all one piece of plastic and it would be all smooth everywhere. And then what I used to do is take a knife or take my keys and try to open it and end up scratching the CD case.
Yeah. And the nice thing though about that,
or starting a fire because it starts heating up, just
yeah.
Well, but there was layers to it too. So finally, now you get in through the plastic, but then you have that sticker along the top,
the top of it.
Sometimes it was
that came later on though.
Yeah, it was like the top, and then sometimes it was like the bottom, and even some of them had like all three of the sides, and you're just like, look, I bought that. Like, what are you protecting in here? What secrets are inside this CD?
And then, if you got a thick book, if it came with a really, really thick book, like, I don't know, like, I think Frank Sinatra's Duets album had a thick book because he was, like, fucking dying soon. So he was thanking everyone on his way out.
Yeah.
And if you take that book out, you can't get it back in clean.
No.
You've ruined the book by taking it out.
It would always crinkle. It would crinkle.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because they just have those little plastic holders in the inside cover there.
Which begs the question of how did they ever fit it in the first place?
Right.
Like, you ever have that where something comes out? Like, for instance, my wife and I, we went with like the kids and all, we're trying on our Halloween costumes because we ordered them all in, and obviously we're not going out to the store and trying them on in person. So we ordered them all, and we're like, we want to see if this is going to fit. It is impossible to repack a Halloween costume in its little like bag that it comes in. Have you ever tried to do that?
The reason that it's because it's like how they get the the caramel in the caramel bars. Is that they put it? You know what I mean? Like they basically inject the costume. Into the bag.
They must. It's like injected, like probably already wrapped in a bag, and then they like pull the wrapper off, so it's like tucked in the bag. I don't know, but it's impossible. But I've got a pretty cool Halloween costume this year.
Like me trying to refold the T-shirt out like Hot Topic. I was like, oh, let me see if this fits. And I tried to fold it again. I go, I just crumple up and
fuck it. Here.
Yeah. I do the little shuttle pass, right? And, throw it to the back of the fucking pile when nobody see it.
Sorry, guys.
You walk up to someone and be like, yeah, no, you just walk up to the person that works there and you're just like, hey, I saw this just kind of bunched up. I just thought maybe you'd want to refold it. And,
this these shirts here. I don't know what
this
you want me
Young
to
Bucks
do.
T-shirt at Hot Topic.
I like when you go to Foot Locker or something and everything is all this tissue paper and shit everywhere. But they get it and they're like, I'll take care of it. Please do not try to put this back because it's not going to, you don't know how this works.
That is another
You're
thing. Like going to the shoe store, like and opening up to try on a pair of shoes. You're never getting that paper back in. Sometimes they have like the plastic thing that like, it's like a plastic stick that's like in there. And the worst part, I tried to put on a shoe once and I couldn't get it on. And I didn't realize like they put paper in, but they must have like run out. So I pulled the first thing of paper out, but there was like still some at the toe. Something like that. I'm like, how big are my feet now? Like what happened since my last pair of shoes? And there was just paper in there. So I felt kind of like an idiot.
Yeah. That's like, but there's sometimes I'm like, oh, if you really, if you have a thin foot and want to show off a little thickness, you would leave that encasing in, so it'll still keep the integrity of the shoe.
Yeah.
Just my grandmother still wears shoulder pads.
I was I put on I think it was Raw, and
the wrestling show.
Yeah, the professional wrestling broadcast from World Wrestling Entertainment. Yep. So they had this show on Monday Night Raw, and Stephanie McMahon comes out, and my wife like kind of is like looking. She's like, "Is she wearing shoulder pads?" And I think she was like in whatever she was just wearing this past week. It was like kind of like a denim, like a lenum. It was like denim and leather. I don't know, whatever it was, and it was actually kind of cool.
Which Triple H dabbled in the denim leather combo quite extensively.
Yeah, but this was like the material
he
itself
flat-ironed
was
his hair too.
Yeah, this wasn't a layered situation like Triple H.
Right.
But
was he cold? Was he hot? Did we ever get an answer there?
No. I remember when he first came out wearing that. It was when he came back from tearing his quad the first time.
Yeah.
And it was in 2002.
Yeah, you have to specify.
The first time, yeah.
The beautiful day one.
Yes, which, dude, that was a good time. That was
People always sing, everybody sings Leave the Memories Alone. I'm a Beautiful Day Triple H
dude,
guy.
that was
I'm a Lonely Road of Faith guy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
That one was the best one.
It really was.
They said that one. They said that one made Vince cry. Actually.
Oh, and then when they go to like the kind of like when they break it down, and you've got the NWO there, and Medusa's dropping the belt, and it's like, man, it really, that was like a special. I don't do stuff like that.
That's one of those songs where I go, if it wasn't for this video, this song would have made no fucking sense. What is the point of this song without this video?
So I used that song to make for my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary. I used it to make a montage for them because that had just come out on WWF, and I was like, I was just digging that. I'm like, this is the perfect thing for it. And then it got into that like kind of rock part, and I'm like, I don't know what to do here. So I found like old like bar mitzvah videos of them like dancing and like put it in, and it turned out okay. Like that was it. But no, but remember when Triple H came back and he was I mean, I guess we'll say I think he was drinking a lot of protein shakes at that point because he was so big, and so much bigger than he had been before. But I remember like it was the first time I think in my life that I had like legitimate fear for a wrestler because I was so worried he was going to tear his quad, like walking, just just walking around, running around. Because I didn't really like get the concept of like rehabilitation and the fact that he had surgery and like he was good. But like when he went like running, I think he did like a running choke, like not really a choke slam, but like a choke tackle. And
that was part of his hot comeback.
Yeah.
He was like experimenting with like, I'm a cerebral assassin, but I'm also a babyface.
Yeah. So it was like
running choke.
Running choke. It was like right out of like one of like the moves you can do for Create a Wrestler on No Mercy. Like it was, so he like grabbed that and I'm just thinking he lands down on his knees. I'm like, oh, this is going to be it. This is going to be it. And no, he was all right. But
the shitty thing about creating me on No Mercy is that all my signature moves are weak grapples. It's not very effective to play the game with.
Yeah, but I mean, you mash those buttons hard enough, something will happen.
Yeah, I think so. If you get like a Perry Saturn or something, then you're really in the hunt. But no, I always fear for when I watch like Andre's last 2 or 3 years of wrestling.
Yeah.
And then like he wrestled past when he wrestled for WWE.
Right.
He did like some stuff in Japan and Mexico.
And Mexico.
He's wearing a red version of his
he took a shit on Bad News Brown in a 6-man tag and
but did he?
Yeah. Because I know
Bigelow told me the story. Bigelow was in the 6-man tag and Bigelow was in ECW and he told me the story. Like Andre would do the butt, get in the corner and hit you with his ass. Or, if he's being a babyface, he would rub it in, and he had drank too much the night before, and he had drank some of the water. They say don't drink the water. He drank the water, so he boom, and then is like the fucking sound that came out of it. It just ran down his fucking chest, and fucking Bad News Brown just powdered out of the ring and ran to the locker room to hit the showers early.
Probably vomit.
Is like a usual Bad News Brown move anyway. Like he often like just was like, I'm done, whatever, count me out. I don't care.
He had to feed his sewer rats.
Yeah, I'm out. Just fucking had to run back.
Well, because like I've heard that story on Something to Wrestle before they've told that, but I never heard it in like the actual like detail because the story was always like I always pictured he just like sat there and deliberately like took a shit on him.
Right.
But so, man.
Hey boss, check this out.
What bothers me with things like those stories and when I watch Dark Side of the Ring is that I know everyone they interview is a worker. So it's just a Russian doll of more bullshit.
Yeah.
And they're like, whoa, wasn't that great? I can't believe that really happened. I'm like, okay, well, the only person who I was like, I came away really impressed with this season was John Stossel.
That he outed himself as that man was a worker right there. Yeah. Like, he just completely outed himself that he was never actually hurt. Like, come on.
I have a very huge reverence for Dr. D.
Yeah.
He's like, oh my God, the promos, I'm like, really great. And like, he's also funny. And I liked his work with Piper and all this stuff. And when I almost met him at StarCast, but I was too afraid to say hello.
So I have a funny story about that. Back then I was doing a podcast with Bill Apter. And we were maybe 5 episodes in, and that's when the first StarCast was happening. So I get a call from Bill. He's like, listen, I got a gig for you at StarCast. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I thought I was just going to go there, do some interviews with people like the Blue Meanie. I'm like, okay, well, what is it? He's like, well, so we're doing like I don't know if it was like I think it was the Wrestle Crap panel.
Yeah.
And he's like, so we had this idea that like, you'll be sitting there and you'll keep insulting wrestling. And then, Dr. D is going to be there and he's going to, get up and smack you across the face and knock you out of your chair, and that'll be it. And I was like, I'm going to pass on that for a couple of reasons. My first one was, I was like, so aside from him, I'm the only one up there on the panel that was ever actually a wrestler. I was like, so I don't know that I'm going to be the one up there talking about, oh, it's fake, oh, it's all that. I said, but okay, but I can understand it's a comedy thing. I said, so more than that, I have no interest in getting smacked in the face by him. I've seen the video. I know it's good. So I actually was like, I don't think it's exactly the best idea to do, and I passed on it, and I'm glad I did, to be honest.
Yeah, that was absolutely, because when wrestlers stop working and then get to do something again, like, he would have to get whatever 15 years of not working out in that one slap.
Yeah. And then what if he starts having like flashbacks while I'm doing my whole, I think this is all phony. I think this is all, and then, or what, then I was worried it was going to be like a big rib and like no one was going to smarten him up to it. And like they were going to have me just keep going until he decided to smack me.
He's one of those guys where I don't even think it matters if you smarten him up or not. You're going to get, like, he throws a shoot and he's probably going to be pissed off anyway, and that's it.
And so, like, I saw him at StarCast, and I was like, all right, I'm glad I didn't do that. And then afterwards, I was like, man, maybe we would have had some fun, whatever. Then I watched Dark Side of the Ring, and I'm like, man, that would have been such a bad. And then all the fans that would have been there, then they all would have hated me for that because they would have thought that it was real. I'd prefer them to hate me for other reasons,
I'm pretty sure Dr. D's working slap was just as stiff as his shoot slap.
Yeah.
Because it reminds me of the time Ricky Morton went up to a guy. I was like, hey, man, they had been working the loop. And Ricky goes, dude, we're going to go in there and you're just going to haul off and punch me right in the fucking face. And the guy's like, why, Ricky? He's like, because your fucking work punches are fucking killing me. But yeah, Dr. D was at the Les Cauliflower Alley event I went to. And Gertner went up to him, and Gertner was contemplating asking him about reenacting that. And Doctor was like,
Gertner, you like those neck braces? Because
he's like, let's just stick with a handshake.
I got an autographed copy of his book though, and it's good.
Yeah.
I like it. He's a guy who's like, really lost his place in the business because of everything that happened,
He was like the original Stone Cold Steve Austin to me.
Yes.
Just seeing him on the show with the shotguns and the kids and the wife and cook my dinner, woman, and all that kind of stuff, just craziness. But and then when Steve Austin started doing the Stone Cold thing, I was like, man, this is Dr. D all over again. But Dr. D was like a no bullshit kind of guy. He had nothing to hide and all that stuff. And the fact that he's, he was willing to do the dark side, it was really cool because I like that whole series. But like out of everybody who did that show, he felt like the most genuine guy.
Yeah. I was asked both seasons. They asked me the first season. I think they asked me to play Eddie Guerrero, and the second season, I think first season they asked me to play Brett. And the second season, they asked me to play Eddie because they filmed it in Toronto. But I'm union, so I couldn't do it. But also, I was like, I want to say, like, thank you for looking at me and going, there's our Eddie Guerrero. And there's our Bret Hart. Like, that means a lot. I know I will be obscured in shadows, but I just want to say thank you.
Yeah. I think he could pull off the facial hair. I mean, sometimes when I watch you on the Sunday morning and you haven't shaven, you got the little bit of the Eddie Guerrero, Orlando Bloom kind of look going.
I shaved for this interview, by the way, because I saw myself and I was like, I don't know.
One of us did, at least.
Yeah. Well, you guys are I can't. It bothers me. I see myself on camera and I go, this has to go.
So
as far as facial hair, this is about all as I could do. As I've explained before in the podcast, I hate mustaches. So I like having the facial hair here to cover the double chinage.
Right.
But like I hate this because I take a sip and then there's like it's a flavor. It's a flavor saver.
So I for the longest time was doing I was clean shaven whenever I would do any of like the StarCast events or do my shows or anything like that. And it was really the StarCast events that were driving me crazy because in real life I usually would just have kind of like, I'd trim it up every once in a while and just have like a little bit of like a stubble type thing. But StarCast, every single day, we'd be there for like 4 days, and every morning I'm getting up and I'm shaving, which is not something I normally do. So then I finally was like, like my daughter asked me to grow my beard back because prior to doing all this stuff back in wrestling a couple years ago, I had grown like a pretty like big beard. And she was like looking at the picture and she's like, when are you going to grow that back? So I decided to do it. And people like went like inappropriately nuts over the fact that I had a beard when I showed up for like my December show. Like people, like I was getting all these like posts, like people were calling it like, I'm digging your Arn Anderson beard. And then one was like, I love your Rick Rude beard. And I'm like, why? Like those definitely aren't the same beard. And and so I started doing a beard. And I've had people tell me that, Meanie, I think you're only told me like, yeah, don't shave it. Don't shave it.
I was like, keep it. The beard, keep it.
So I actually did shave the other day because it was one of those mishaps where you're doing a little trim and, you know, you kind of knock some of the hair out in the sink.
And you start going down this road.
Yeah, well, you knock it out in the sink, and this is the second time this has happened to me. Where
Sometimes I knock it out in the
to
trash
a different
can,
setting, and then I come back, and we're growing the beard back at this point. But yeah, it's a little beard story.
What I like about your beard, if I may say, is that it doesn't. The way it is right now is that it doesn't change the shape of your face.
Okay. Well,
know what I
normally
mean?
I'll kind of have it like kind of angled in a way to create more of like the chin you have that I don't. So I'll try to angle it and create some length to my to get more of a Bert and less of an Ernie, I guess you would say. Yeah.
Right. I also find the facial hair for me hampers my impish grin. You know? If I'm trying to say something sly and then smirk, it doesn't sit well.
It's like too evil.
Yes, it's as you know, Meanie, because you're an avid watcher of City After Dark.
It's appointment watching for me. Mrs. Meanie make it a point to watch it.
It's so sweet of you. And then I just feel like when the more facial hair I have, the less I can get away with saying. That's filthy and whatever. It makes me feel worse.
Interesting.
No, well, I dig the facial hair because, like, I learned from Bill Alfonso, like, always change up your look. Like he said, he would always change his look. He would have it grow his hair out, get a perm, buzz it, grow a stash, shave off the stash. So when anybody looks at you, go, there's something different, but I can't quite put my finger on it.
Well, that's so interesting you heard it from him because I saw he did an indie show last week and he looks exactly the same as he did in 1998.
Well, now he's a nostalgia act. There's a different, now.
Yeah, he got his teeth fixed though. He looks a lot better.
And I heard he actually got a new whistle as well.
Well, when you have new teeth, you have a totally new whistle.
Right.
Yeah.
He kind of had that shredder grill for a little bit, so he got that fixed. But no, but Bill still looks amazing, man.
He was never the same after Giant Gonzalez chloroformed him. Never.
There's got to be like a wrestling warehouse where they got ether, chloroform, like box of gimmicks like Conrad always talks about,
But I always wonder about things like there's been various segments when they've sprayed shit on people.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And I'm like, what does it, I mean, obviously it's not shit, so it's not going to smell like shit, but what does it smell like to the front row? And does it hamper their shit pop?
Right.
Or are you getting a large enough pop from the rest of the arena that's further away?
Right.
Like when they'll do it, because they'll do it up on the stage, I think is when they've done it for the most part.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah. I don't know. I always wonder if
a little secret. That's when they, I'm still on the payroll. I'm there for the shit pops.
Yeah.
So they just hover me above the ring like Sting. But remember, I told you, Paul. We're in ECW. I pitched to Paul Heyman the idea of doing Sting, but call myself Stink, and he's like, come be lower down. It's Stink, and do the whole thing. But
and thanks to our own Andy Slichter, that is a T-shirt available now. Is that on Pro Wrestling Tees or is that a Patreon exclusive?
I think that's a Patreon exclusive.
Exclusive.
Yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah, yes. Paul sold the idea to Vince, and they just hover me above the ring like Sting, and whenever they need a good shit pop,
you would just wait there.
Yeah. Just having a bowl of Raisin Bran and a cup of cold brew, just to prep like a singer right before he goes on stage, doing vocal exercise.
How are you doing today? Because yesterday you put out, as we're recording this on a Saturday, yesterday Meanie put out a tweet, and because it was public, I feel comfortable talking about it, that your ass was quite the chatty Cathy.
Yeah.
I believe is how you referred to it. How are you feeling today?
Mrs. Meanie made the kielbasa the night before and some.
Why don't you have a reason,
Yeah, I could pass the heat.
Yeah, just like in the ring, everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, just smile and act like you meant it.
The worst is when you fart with no psychology.
No.
Yeah.
So
when I Sundays will be my cheat day, and I basically can save up macros and spend them on, whatever. And not that I'm too crazy, but I'll have whatever, pizza, wings, ice cream, and I'll end up the end of the day and Monday morning, I'll have like someone else's ass. Where there's not only like I have, I farted, I have to deal with it, but also there's this uncanny, who is this? My body's like, I don't recognize this person.
Is it a different pitch or is it a different
No,
scent?
you know what? I've been, and you are quite a fart connoisseur, so you'll be able to help me with this. I rarely make a noise. Is that because I'm too loose or too tight?
I would assume it would have to be more of a loose situation.
Yeah.
Might sound acquisitive, like,
Yeah. Well, because think about like a balloon, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like if you just open it barely, that's when you'll get like a bit of a sound. But if you open it all the way, then it's like a,
But then you get that flapping.
Oh, that's true.
You get that thing.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes in honor of Eddie Van Halen, because Eddie just passed, like he was known for changing pitch and all that stuff. So I'll start farting standing upwards, and then I'll do a squat.
Yes.
I'll do, and it'll go, and it'll sound like like I stepped in a mud puddle, like pulling my shit out of a mud puddle kind of thing.
There's a movie I've yet to see it, but I really recommend that you review it. It's called The Fartiste, and I cannot for the life of me remember who's in it. Some old comedian.
Dom DeLuise? It sounds like a Dom DeLuise type movie.
I'm gonna look it up. It's someone like that, but it's not him.
I'm thinking of Fatso. That's another.
Fatso is, and also Fatso is one of Tommy Dreamer's favorite movies.
That's my favorite insult. Hey, what's up, Fatso? nobody busts out a good Fatso. Hey, shut up, Fatso.
It's based on a real guy who headlined at the Moulin Rouge.
Interesting.
Paris billed him as Le Petomane, known as the Gas Maniac.
The Moulin Rouge turned Moulin Brown.
Oh,
yeah.
So,
is that the name of the episode today?
Me and Mrs. Me were laying in bed last night, or 2 nights ago. And we got a new bed, and I was all comfortable. And I went to let out try to sneak a fart, so undetected, no sound.
Has that ever worked for you?
No.
Okay.
Or
I feel like I've heard a lot of stories that start with, I tried to sneak a fart.
Yeah. There's always, dude, one time I was on a date at a place in Philly called the Philly Rock, and I tried to sneak a fart on a date. I was like, try to do like the one cheek sneak and shit myself. And I had to, I went, hey, I'll be right back. So I go to the bathroom, and it's a fucking crime scene in my fucking pants. So I'm just like, it's the only solitude. I'm like, oh, I'm busy, and I had to fucking throw my underwear in the fucking toilet tank and just, went back to dinner all commando and stuff like that. But somewhere,
guy, and then they were like, wow, you seem really like loose. You really loosened up. The movie has Shecky Green and Jackie Vernon in it. It's from 1987. And it's like it's a mockumentary. I'm going to show. Oh, look at this. Can you see this?
Yeah. Oh, man.
Isn't that a great face?
Me on it.
Now, the first time I met you was at House of Hardcore at the Arena.
Okay. Oh, all right. Yeah.
And I was with David Arquette, and there's a famous diner that's close.
Oregon Diner.
Yes. So we got, because there was a signing in the day, where David got conned into buying Bob Backlund's book. And David said, this is like my favorite, you know, when we did the documentary, there was a lot. Have you seen it?
Yes.
Okay. But as you know, like, because you follow us online and stuff, there's a lot that the camera crew was not there for. You know, like we did 20 or 30 matches and he just wanted to do it. I thought the crew would show up. He'd be like, let's book all these shows. And he would show up by himself. Like, what the fuck are you doing? It's an easier way to do this. But I remember we went there. And so after the signing before the show, he said, this is my favorite thing where I get mad that it's not on camera. And he said, I want to go to this diner. It's famous. And I said, yeah, but like, you're famous. And then we ended up going and we hated the meal, which was perfect.
You sat like a table over from me. I didn't want to bother you guys.
So David will always easily get worked because he's like a naive 12-year-old, you know? He believes in the business in the worst way.
He believes in good people, unfortunately.
Yeah. So leading up to House of Hardcore, Bully Ray was shitting on him. And Bully certainly, like, if he knows he can work you, would enjoy working you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Bully was off in the corner at a big table, and David's like, "Oh my God, he's here," and whatever. I was like, "Listen, look, just relax. Send him over a pie." And he was sitting at a huge table, and we sent them over a pie, and it was great. And I was like, "Don't say anything. Just tell the waiter. You know, the waiters will say that that's from David Arquette." And they had some nice pie on us.
Nice.
So did like he acknowledge it back at the building? Like,
yeah, when he came back, he was just like, you know, one of those like, not gonna fully give it up, but I'm gonna do like the little, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thank you for the pie thing, because it is a nice gesture.
What kind of pie? First, what are we talking about?
It was either a cherry. It might have been a cherry and a key lime. And David was just like, bring them both over and ask who wants a piece. They're fresh. They're on the counter.
Yeah.
And then at night, we went to that cheesesteak place.
Tony Luke's.
And they have their little shitty walk of fame.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like Bobby Vinton.
Yeah.
You know?
They used to have photos, but, you know, they got the walk of fame now.
Did they try to get David Arquette to be up there?
No, because I have a feeling they didn't recognize him in that state. So Bully, and we ended up doing a thing in the ring with Sandman and Bully powerbombed David through a table, and David inadvertently sandbagged him because he has no idea how to take a powerbomb, right? Not his fault, but like Bully like had to basically do it. So David's back was killing him. And the next day we flew from Philly to LA because we were shooting something. And he said, I have to go. I got to go to this chiropractor or whatever. And so we went. He was like, we have to go to Courtney's house because he's going to meet us there and he fixes her too and whatever. I'm like, okay. So we went, and that's when I met Courtney. And this guy came and set up this massage table, and he's working on David, you know, all this cracking shit. And I'm looking at her like, I'm sorry. I accept no responsibility for this. Like, he's a grown man. And then David's like, you should do his show. He has a coffee show. And she's like, what? I'm like, listen, just don't listen to this idiot. Go about your day. And then she was like, do you want a cappuccino? I make a great one. And I said, well, like, I don't normally have them, but if it's so great, how can I say no?
And when else are you going to say, so Courtney Cox was making me this cappuccino?
Well, one day I will say it again, because halfway through making it, she fucked it up, and it was the worst cappuccino I've ever had in my life. And the last time I talked to her via FaceTime, we got into an argument because she tried to blame it on the machine. She said, oh, I have a new machine. And I'm like, I don't think it's anything to do with the machine. Milk and coffee, and I think it was you. So people will realize this years later, is that I'm someone who, you know, will hold on to a grudge. Chelsea Green still owes me $10 from like 5 years ago, and I tweet her about it all the time.
But is it $10 Canadian or American?
It was $10 Canadian because we were in Canada.
Oh, okay. So it's like
Yeah.
$7.75 American.
Which should be even easier to give me.
Yeah. Right. She's in the States now. You know, she's got the currency. She can send it over.
She's got that NXT money.
Yeah. She doesn't need NXT. She needs just money.
Yeah.
$7. You can be signed to the AWA. You should be able to give me this money.
She could be the new Sherry Martel, AWA women's champion. You know,
I have such an affinity for the AWA.
me too.
Yeah, I got something to show you then.
God.
Dude,
Also-
I actually got to go to a couple shows as a kid when they were.
Really?
Yeah, I went to the. Hold on, what do you got
Oh,
there?
I've got.
What?
So
What is-
I had a indie promotion that I ran, and we basically became like an AWA affiliate, but it was like clearly not the real AWA, even though it
Right.
was. It was like whatever was left,
Well,
like the
It's
scraps.
like how there's 8 NWAs.
It was
Right.
it was Dale Gagner. Or,
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
there's a
no,
guy
no,
who
no,
was
no.
A new AWA Dale Gagner.
No,
he,
what?
he knocked the R off, so he started calling himself Dale Gagne. He just took the R off his name,
Yeah,
and he
but
made up.
it was a
bullshit
guy
story.
who was pretending to be a Gagne, but he wasn't really. But I don't think it was that name. I don't know. But whatever it was, like, but that's what, like, Meanie, I sent you that.
Vern Troyer.
But no, so I got this and made by Bullocks of Henderson, apparently, is on the back here. But I got this for being like a member of the AWA, and that's when I went. When I went from OVW to Wisconsin. There was like an AWA tag title tournament with Mr. St. Laurent was in there, and I actually talked to him at the ECW.
Hold on. You got to tell him who. You got to tell RJ who you wrestled in a tag match.
Oh yeah. So it was me and my partner Matt Mangle. We wrestled against Jake the Milkman Millman
Yes, you did.
and Frankie Thumper. Do you know
Ooh, yeah. This is
Yeah.
like they're like legendary character actors.
Yes.
They're like the Vincent Chiavelli of like
And
choppers.
we're back, like at that point, like Jake the Milkman looked like he was 70 years old at that point. Like I don't know how old he actually was, but I was so scared that he was going to turn to dust, like if I hit him too hard. But he like insisted on, like they went over, but he insisted on making us look as good as possible. He was like, "What do you do?" And we're all there, we're there ready to just be like, we're here to do whatever you want us to do. And he's like, "Well, what do you do?" I'm not even gonna try to sound like him, but he's like, "Well, what do you do?" And so we're kind of like, we start with like, I'm like, "Oh, I'll do like a back elbow." I'm thinking like my flying back elbow. That's an easy one. That's
Yeah.
like, and then he's like, "Well, what else? What else?" And by the end of it, I mean, I don't have a video of it, but I have pictures of, so Mangle has him like in a, I have him in a sharpshooter. Mangle's dropping a leg on him. And then we've got like some other, like he had us doing all these things. And then he called for me to step on him while he was on the bottom rope and like choke him at the bottom. And I'm like petrified this entire match that I'm going to kill this man. He was awesome. And I remember
AWA legend.
yeah, and I remember Frankie Thumper, he like pulls us into before the match, pulls us into a coat closet. And he's like, so I figure, we'll go in there, kind of start things off. We'll do a little bada bing, bada boom, waltz around Texas, slip on a banana peel and bring it home. Good? And we're like, yeah, sounds good, man. Thank you. And he like leaves and like Matt and I turn to each other. Matt's like, do you know? I'm like, I have no fucking idea what that means. I'm like, I get the slip on the banana peel part. I'm like, I don't. So, but it was one of the most enjoyable matches of my entire career. I had so much fun. After like I started realizing that this guy wasn't going to die from, the slightest touch. But yeah, so I still have this plaque and I found it like a month ago or a couple months ago and I put it up. Yeah. An AWA member.
I would love to know, like, if they had to pay dues, like anyone who was affiliated with the AWA.
So
Probably not.
I don't think they did, and I think that's why it was kind of a short-lived situation. But I talked to
We're associated. We're associated.
Well, because I
That's it.
talked to at the MLW show where Meanie and I, like the last like when we did that interview for my fight show, which is what kind of sparked the idea of doing the podcast. I was at the MLW show and I was talking to Mr. Saint Laurent, and because he was, I think he either was managing or won the tournament. Like I think he won the tag titles that tournament. He's telling, because he told me he still has the belt because it like closed up immediately after that. So, but I remember too, I was down in OVW and they're like, don't tell anybody you're doing this show. Cause I like mentioned it to someone, like, don't tell anybody. They're going to be really pissed if you're doing another show. I'm like, I'm like training down. I'm not even on TV. Like, I'm not like, yeah, this is the thing. They're going to be like, oh my God, the AWA that's running a show in a bowling alley in Wisconsin. Oh my God, they stole our lowest guy on the totem pole below our lowest totem pole. Like I was sub totem pole in OVW, and like
I think you could never have that OVW blow off with Jake Millman because
I know it's never. Yeah, we were trying to set it up and it just didn't happen. Yeah, good times, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, but as a kid, I got to go to some of those. The AWA came to Atlantic City at the Tropicana, and I got to see some of those matches. I saw. What was it, Kurt Hennig and Scott Hall against Steve Regal and Jimmy Garvin. I got to see them. And the cool thing, like, I keep looking for it online because, like, right as they come back from commercial, they show live from Atlantic City, blah, blah, blah. And you hear the, like, the announcers and stuff. And you see this little hat bobbing. Like, it's me going back to my seats. And I can never find that. I was like, I was on AWA TV. See, that's me.
Pod Squad, look for this. Find this for the meanie.
I love. Go ahead, please.
Me and my grandpa. I told this story to Scott Hall recently. He popped for it, but me and my grandfather went to go pick up our tickets for the AWA show because we lived like 2 blocks from there. And we go to the fucking lobby, and there's Kurt Hennig, Greg Gagne, Scott Hall. I'm like, oh my God. And they had like a little flyer on the fucking desk, they at the casino hotel wherever I get it. I go, all right. Mr. Kurt Hennig, Kurt Hennig signs it. Mr. Scott Hall, can I have your autograph? Scott Hall signs it. And I look at Greg Gagne. I go, nah. And I walked away. This 10-year-old kid went, nah, and just walked away. And Scott and Kurt started fucking laughing.
That's awesome.
I just saw Scott Hall like before the apocalypse. I told him that story. He fucking pops for it. But.
There's some things when you're a kid, you're like, oh, I thought that was awesome. And then when you're older, you're like, that was actually shit. But like Greg Gagne, I think, no matter what age I was, I'd be like, there's something going on here that's weird.
Some kind of nepotism.
I remember a couple of times, I was just like jog my memory of, so I've mentioned before, I had a friend whose dad worked for Prism. So he could get into the Philadelphia Spectrum, into the locker room. And so.
What a beautiful logo of the Spectrum, by the way. I love it.
Yeah.
That little rainbow Spectrum logo.
Oh, yeah. It's classic.
I have some of the bricks from the Spectrum. Because one night we were drunk and went over there. I was like, I know where they keep the bricks. It was like a fucking, like we're heisting gold bars. It was me, Mrs. Meanie, and our friend Brian Geisler. And we drive we were at McCusker's, drinking it up. And I was like, oh, I was just at the Spectrum earlier. I know where they keep the bricks. So we go back over there. And we knew we could come back because it was like when they turned the clocks back. So like we would have an extra hour of drinking. So we go over there, pull up, lift the gate. Brian Geisler's unloading the bricks from underneath the fence, and Tracy's throwing them in the car as like the worst, bank heist, you can imagine.
But no, I remember going there, and so first we were down in like I guess it was where all the wrestlers would enter through, and we were waiting for, I guess, passes or whatever to go into the locker room. And we went a couple of times, so I'm not sure if these were 2 separate events, but I remember the Big Boss Man and the Repo Man came in together, and like Repo Man just kind of walked past like quickly when he saw us because I think he realized like, kayfabe, and Boss Man like gave us a thumbs up, and we're like, oh my God, that's amazing. We're like, did they come in here together? And like, no, they're probably not really talking to each other. They probably, don't want to get in a fight outside or, and we're like trying to like convince ourselves. And then we're in the back, and I remember Paul Bearer comes up, and he's totally in gimmick. Like he's got the makeup on and everything. This is just a house show, and he's coming in and he starts saying hello to us, like in the whole voice and everything. It was awesome. And then the Undertaker walks down the hallway and goes, and I remember like it was yesterday, he had to duck under the door to get into the locker room. But the Undertaker was wearing, if you can picture like a orangish neon Nike silky warm-up.
Oh no.
Because he wasn't, I mean, he had just gotten there. And that was like I remember as like a little kid, like I didn't know, I couldn't like reconcile that in my mind. It was just a very odd, like it was really like a very weird thing. And then I saw Roddy Piper walking down the hallway, and I think he was wrestling Ric Flair that night, but then they were like just chatting in the hallway together. And I'm like looking at all these things. It was like one of those, you ever see like in like a movie or something where it's like, you're noticing like one thing, noticing the next thing and everything. And I'm like, things are just not making sense to me. And it was like very bizarre. And then I saw the Natural Disasters walking, and they looked like twins. Like it was incredible seeing that they were totally in their gear, and they're walking like Jimmy Hart's like, yeah, man, he's like, hey, baby, blah, 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 you know, and like, and the Natural Disasters are walking away. It was such like a bizarre, there was like no kayfabe, but people were like in gimmick, and it was like, and then I met one of the Beverly Brothers and after the show, and he was like kind of just waiting around because he said the other one was in the bathroom, and it was like a weird thing. And then that's when I met Road Warrior Animal the first time, and he came out and started trying to sell my dad on Zubaz. And he's like, here's a pamphlet on these Zubaz pants, and I'm like, man, you're barking up the wrong tree with my dad, but I thought it was really cool. Yeah, so that's my story.
And see, Jimmy Hart is one of those people who is like always in, like, does not.
Oh yeah.
Not like just he is his gimmick, and he's always ready to. You know what I mean? There's no come down. I did a movie with him called Monster Brawl, which is a flaming piece of shit. And he only ate once a day. He had like a really big dinner. Right. And then other than that, like 6 o'clock in the morning, like he was just straight up Jimmy Hart and like ready to go and like ready to do promos. Like if you were like, hey, let's do a radio show, he would just go do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there was
like
no
Clark of wrestling, you know, he never aged.
Yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't believe, I saw him in the, I guess it was like the social media room, whatever the heck it was. I'll call it the green room, put myself over, at StarCast, in Vegas. And that's where I met, like actually for the first time, met Jimmy Hart, and nicest guy, but he's straight up Jimmy Hart. Like there was no, I wasn't like, here's Jimmy Hart out of gimmick. Like, nope, this was Jimmy Hart. Super cool, super nice, high energy, high voice. It was a treat.
And I've been around Jimmy like in non-public places, and it's kind of like, you know, you think you would go, oh, finally I could be myself. Yeah. And let me let my my hair down or whatever. Let my tits out or something. But, you know, he would just always just be. He'd be fucking Jimmy Hart to the fucking max, but you gotta fucking respect that guy. Hey, I mean, what career that guy's had. You start off your music career knocking the Beatles out of #1 spot on the charts, and then you become this pop culture icon in the world of professional wrestling.
Since we're speaking of pop culture and old school wrestling and all of that, I think right now we should pay the bills and go to one of our sponsors.
Time Life.
Homage to Time Life. Do you want to take us through a Time Life one, RJ?
You call them homage? You pronounce the H?
So we've been calling them homage because we couldn't figure it out. We kept going back and forth for the first few weeks that they were sponsoring. We were like, homage, homage, we don't know. And then someone was like, I think it's homage. So we were like, all right, well, we're pre-recording a thing for them and we're just going to call it homage.
I have a couple of their shirts. I have the Legends of the Hidden Temple shirt.
Yeah.
Which I was just like, I have to get this. And then there's this other guy who they've posted, Homage just posted about, I think his name is Jewish Dad Tells Jokes on Instagram.
Really?
And it's just this guy, literally Jewish dad, always wearing a different Homage shirt and telling like bad jokes. But I also feel like he's not posting them. He's maybe sending them to his son or his family, and his family's just posting them. I mean, the jokes are terrible, but like he's hilarious. And like, there's got to be some post there where I'm the only person liking it.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, man, I depends on what day it is. I'm either homage or homage.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, but our pre-recorded commercial says homage, so we'll throw to that for just a brief second. Cool.
Word.
The best there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. If you want in on the best wrestling tees in the business, Homage has you covered. All the styling, profiling, limousine riding looks from the rings of yesterday and today in super soft fabric and comfortable fits you can't get enough of.
Yeah, that's right, man. I've been a fan of Homage for years. I've been wearing their shirts for years. Everything from pro wrestling to pop culture. And dude, I get so many reactions out and about in the wild when I'm wearing my Dusty Rhodes shirt, or I'm wearing I'm a Funker shirt, or my old school ECW shirt. Homage makes shirts that are comfortable and stylish and definitely retro, which is the thing I've loved about them for years.
Mind of the Meanie listeners, you can use the coupon code MEANIE for 20% off your first purchase at homage.com. That's HOMAGE.com.
Ooh, yeah, the homage.com. Freak out! Freak out! Freak out!
So yeah, homage.com.
I don't know if I did Randy Savage there. I don't know.
I believe it was in the copy that they sent us. So
Oh.
I think that's why you did it.
Oh, well, you put it that way.
I think because I was like, oh, someone has to do it. Hey, Meanie, do you want to do the Macho Man voice?
Oh, yeah. But I like the music you selected there, the Crockett Cup 85 theme.
I think you selected it.
Yeah, I did. I do things to pop myself and just me and just my own. Yeah.
No, it's great. I love that music. I love when it fades out on that, like when it really kicks in with the dun 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 dun. Like that's, I'm like.
That's where the Fantastics are doing the double drop kick on some Russians in the highlight package.
I implore you to make your next ad with the Lonely Road of Faith music.
Oh, man.
Make a really sad ad about Homage t-shirts.
Oh.
We did an original song for an ad, and we got like thrown off of YouTube or something like that.
We had to pull it and put stock music in. But I guess like nobody...
this YouTube thing called the Hollywood Squared Circle, where I review like wrestling episodes of non-wrestling shows. And I am getting down the list to your episode of Nikki, Blue Meanie. So do hang tight. But the first episode, I got this music online where it was copyright free and blah, 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 blah. And then I put it on YouTube, and YouTube demonetized the video because it's not copyright free music in the Netherlands.
What?
Yeah. So like one country. And I was like, I can't use this. Can't we just geo-block the Netherlands? I don't think I have that big of a following there. But yeah, it was terrible.
I popped for your what's it called? The Hollywood Squared Circles?
Yes.
Because the font is the same font as the back of the BWO shirt. So the Hollywood is the same Hollywood as that's on the back of the BWO shirt in your Hollywood.
That's amazing. That was designed for me by a guy named Future Reunion, who just does he just gets it.
Yeah.
The weirdness.
So that might have been a little wink and a nod to the BWO there. Who knows? Because that's the exact same font as the back of the BWO shirt.
Hey, speaking of winks and nods, we've got Meanie Toons.
Yeah.
Which definitely, I think the thing that allowed us to think this isn't a totally crazy idea to attempt to do something were your videos.
Yeah.
Well, my videos were not even this animation studio here. There was the people who came to like Greektown shows and whatever.
Okay.
Where we have met again the second time. And
had a bathroom moment.
Yes. They said, hey, can we want to like pitch something with you? So we worked on a couple pitches, and they said, in the meantime, those videos, the narration of them, I have them up on my YouTube channel. They were just promos I did years ago. I told those stories just to camera.
Really?
So I'm like, they're stupid and whatever. I thought they were funny. And they were like, we can just animate these. It's like, are you sure? Like, yeah, do you need anything else from me? No. And then they animated the Hogan one and the DX one straight from my YouTube audio, which is amazing. They're like, we'll just take care of it. And then I wrote them the Andre the Giant one.
Okay.
Because I thought, what else? I love making fun of Andre. He's just so weird. Just so weird. Beyond his height. He was just a weird person.
Yeah.
Yeah, and their name is Soulless Animation, and they were delightful. And then they did really well, and I'm like, okay, great. And I'm so happy that your tunes have been doing so well. Are they working for you? You're enjoying them?
Yeah, I mean, you were definitely the inspiration for us, to say, hey, there's this other avenue we could go down. I think my character's kind of cartoony anyway. I was I always call myself the Barney of professional wrestling. Like I'm kid friendly, unless you listen to the podcast, and then out and about.
And it's funny you say that. I actually had to make a PG cut of the first Meanie Toons episode because my brother did the animation for it, and he was like looking at. He's like, my kids keep like looking at it or want to help me with it. And then, so my kids then wanted to see it because they love the Blue Meanie because he's just this giant character. And, and I'm like, I don't think I want to show them this. And so I ended up just kind of doing a little cut where it cut out all the F-bombs and all things like that. And then it was just a funny thing of Blue Meanie farting to the point where the last time you saw my kids, you were like making like fart sounds. And my son, who's 3 years old, was just cracking up because he's running around going, Blue Meanie tooted. It was great.
Well, a couple of those farts were real, but I acted like it was my mouth.
That's the thing. If you can make it, you make your mouth for two of them, the other three can slide by.
Wait a minute. Wait. He worked himself into a toot.
Oh, man.
I was going to say, I didn't bully my own fart, but that's even better.
Oh.
I lip sync to my fart.
No, it was... But that was really like one of, when we're like, can we do this? My brother was listening to that first farting story and was like, dude, this should be it
wasn't a story. It was a fact.
Yes. He's like, this should be a cartoon. And we started talking about it. And, and you had actually introduced us to the studio that did yours. And we talked to them. And my brother was like, I can probably figure out how to do something. And we decided to go like that. But really your stuff was the one where we're like, there's definitely seeing the success of that was like where there's an appetite for these funny little short, animated versions of things. And, and we won't be the last to do it,
No, and I was certainly not the first either. It is so nice that we could do it. And it's also so nice that you say that because in many ways, Mr. Meanie has inspired me comedically. In wrestling. And I distinctly remember the parodies.
Yeah.
And I also, similar to when I would watch The Muppet Show or SCTV when I was younger, I would learn them backwards. Like I had no concept of the Fargos. Right? It was you, and I knew you were making fun of something, and I knew it was fun. Like and that's like stuff like that makes me go, oh, because I talk about shit that nobody understands all the time.
That's what I love about you, by the way. She talk about like Mama's Family. I'm like, ooh,
it's and every time you say things like that, and then I'm like if I'll hear you say like Mama's Family, for instance, I'm like, I know that reference. And then you get really excited. And if you don't know the reference, then it just goes over your head.
But yet, I always want to structure it in a way like when I watch SCTV. I didn't need to know Merv Griffin to enjoy the sketch.
Right.
Rick Moranis was having fun. It was funny on its own merits. So, like, it's one of those things where I go, if you get it, great. If you don't, you still enjoy it.
Well, I think BWO's Kiss, like, is something that stood the test of time. People still talk. That's one of, like, the big ones people still talk about. And, when I saw that, like, I knew who Kiss was, obviously, but I wasn't like a big Kiss fan. I don't know that I'd ever I'd certainly never seen a concert of theirs, but to me, I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. And it almost like introduces you more to the band because of that.
Yeah. And then I also distinctly remember maybe it was in like a Raw magazine or something, but you were the Blue Bloods.
Yeah.
And I remember that. I remember not knowing. And then the other thing, and I look back and I go, that's very impressive, is that you were a parody of the NWO as the NWO was happening.
That was pretty cool, man. And I met the individual members of the NWO, and I'd be like, hey, I first met X-Pac in WWE. I was like, man, I hope you guys didn't mind. He's like, nah, we were watching the WWE. If they weren't wrestling, they were back at the hotel looking for wrestling. They would find ECW and stuff like that. And Scott Hall came to me and told me, he's like, yeah, you were the perfect idea for me to rib Kevin Nash, because I would say to Kevin Nash, well, it's the Blue World Order and he's parodying me. I should be the leader of the New World Order, stuff like that. So they were so cool about it. But the fact that we got to do it, and like with the Kiss one, Kiss had just done their, reunion Unplugged and stuff like that. So we were right on the cusp of being on time with, the Kiss and the BWO. And I'm so fortunate. I'm so flattered. Like, anybody remembers that stuff too, because that was just like syndicated television. We weren't even on national TV at the time.
And so another neat thing though, with the BWO being at the same time as the NWO, you'd see like the people do parodies. Like, if you remember that time period when you had like DX in the Nation, right? Like that was a big, which was hilarious. Certainly has not aged well, some of the aspects of that, like Mizark. But I think the cool thing about the BWO was it was almost like you guys were like dressing as them for Halloween, as opposed to, you were never like insulting them. No. Like it wasn't something where you were like trying to take, maybe there was one or two times or something, but there was never like, I never saw it as like they are making fun of Kevin Nash or making fun of, it was almost like you were like a bunch of like cosplaying almost, right? Like you were just excited to be your own version of the NWO. And I think that's maybe why it went over as well as it did for as long as it did too, because it wasn't just like a one time we'll come out and insult them. You guys completely became like Hollywood Nova was Hollywood Nova. No one was like, oh, here's that Hulk Hogan ripoff. Like, no, you got what he was doing, but he was Hollywood Nova. And the same way with the blue guy. Like, it was so funny and so over the top that no one, like, here's a perfect example. Fake Razor Ramon didn't quite get over as well as the blue guy got over, right?
Right.
So the first thing was like, at that time, there was nothing to make fun of about the NWO. Like, it was the hottest act. They weren't shit. Like, now people usually wait for something to be shit before they make fun of it.
Right.
Or they wait for a lot of time to pass, or they're like, oh, we can, whatever. Like the I'm sorry, I love you, Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair thing. Like, people wait for enough time. They're like, whatever. But like, yeah, so it was hot at the time. That was really healthy, like punching up.
Yeah.
And certainly, ECW was the down. You were in the down position. All you could do is punch up, right? Yeah. But that's why it worked. And it was also aware of what ECW was in relation to all that stuff. And it is like SCTV doing Sweeps Week and trying to do a bunch of ridiculous shit because they don't have the budget. And it's a parody of how networks try to do the same thing. Like, yeah, like that stuff is great. And I always think about that when I make fun of wrestling, and it's a lot. And I go, let's make fun of people like The Undertaker. Like, let's punch up and see. Like, sometimes it's too easy to make fun of wrestling in other ways. I don't want to just shit on people for the sake of shitting on people.
And all our parodies were homages. So to speak.
Or homages.
But also, the good thing about ECW was that there were parodies and attacks and plays on stuff coming in different ways from all sides. Mm-hmm. And you guys were you were like the Sesame Street version of it, where they do Monster Piece Theater. You know what I mean?
Versus like Stone. I was gonna say, like Austin doing the Monday Night Quill. That was definitely a dig. a knock at WCW. And it was a different kind of, which again, got over huge. Really was the first time we got to see that type of personality from him. But yeah, but it's a different type of thing. That would have run its course if he was trying to do that every single week. You're like 3 weeks in and it's like, all right, we can't keep going back to this. But the BWO, you quickly became your own characters. Like the blue guy is another character you played. Like, it's not a Scott Hall ripoff. Even if it originally was supposed to be playing around with that, it's just such a different. And then you had Stevie, who was like basically Stevie. He was like, there was one thing I loved about it was, he'd do like the fist up thing, like Diesel. But like, he like didn't change at all. Or am I remembering this wrong? Because he was just straight up like Stevie Richards, just doing his thing.
What was funny is like earlier before the BWO, we did Shawn Michaels and Diesel. Yeah. So basically, he played Diesel and Scott Hall, in ECW. I was the Heart Attack Kid.
Yes.
I come out with the chaps and the heart, glasses. I do the pose, and he would do the.
I think that's a shirt available at patreon.com/Mind of the Meanie as well. Heart Attack Kid.
And another cool thing is like, WCW, there was a couple times where WCW would take digs at us on TV, and somebody brought up, there was like a Nitro where somebody brought up Bill Alfonso, and somebody said, oh, he's at the bingo hall. So next Saturday, we're at the ECW Arena, a bingo hall, and we would go and get like a stack of like bingo cards, and we start throwing them out. I had a BWO ink stamper at the time. And we're just ink stamping BWO all over these bingo cards, and we're throwing them out. And like the opening next show, that Joey sells, they're throwing out bingo cards, and we get on the mic and kind of call them out again. So it's kind of cool to have that little in real time volley back and forth. But you look at now, you got all these factions, they're like kind of like knockoffs of the NWO, and we were fortunate enough to be at the same time. We were like the original knockoff, but like we weren't seen as like a knockoff. We were seen as our own entity.
Right. And also stuff like the Heart Attack Kid, you're not making fun of anyone but yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Really, you're just using this reference point, and it's a parody, but they're not the target.
Right. The target was you. Meanie, like that's really like that.
Humor's always been self-effacing because, growing up as a kid who was fat, asthmatic, I got bullied a lot. So a lot of my humor as I was growing up, my loves were wrestling, music, stand-up comedy, and I was always trying to make people laugh as a way to make them like me and not bully me. And I would make the joke about myself because I figure if I make the joke about myself first, I disarm the bully kind of thing. And that kind of carried over into my wrestling career where I wasn't afraid of making an ass out of myself because they laugh. And or even if I, bot something, I look at the crowd, go, stuff like that. And they go, that's just Meanie.
Yeah. You remember Nug?
I'm sorry, buddy.
You remember Nug? He was the ring announcer for Greek Town. And okay, good.
Nug's the best. I love him.
A similar trajectory when he was in school, and he thought, gee, I would like to control the laughter. And that, I think, was his MO into comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even if it is at yourself, you can control it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one time I was over in England, and there were wrestlers, Johnny Storm, and I forget who his main opponent was, but we were driving somewhere. And like it got to the point where I was cracking jokes about myself. They're like, mate, why do you keep making fun of yourself? I was like, I don't know. I'm just used to, disarming the bullies and stuff like that. That like to actually to start defending myself to me.
Yeah, you're like with a bunch of people who like you. They're like, why are you doing this? Stop.
Yeah. I was like, I'll ease off the gas pedal there. But yeah, man, I've dealt with bullies all my life, and that's why when I, went to wrestling and stuff like that, and stuff happened in wrestling when you deal with bullies and shit like that. But, my humor is always, I'll make fun of myself first. That way nobody else has control. I control the narrative, You're
very hip, very cutting edge.
So Archie, you had done a something online that was hysterical to me. It was you were like explaining about how wrestling was always like wrestling never made sense, or I don't know if I'm putting it in. It was something about, you mentioned Papa Shango. Like,
yes, how wrestling wasn't better when you were younger. It was better because
we
you were younger. You're dumber than you are now.
It was so funny and so absolutely true at the same time. I just wanted to point that out. I don't even know where, like, if that was just like a post or where people can find that, because it was hysterical.
It's on my YouTube, but that was originally from Mick Foley asked me to open for him for when he did his show, not his last tour, the tour before that, and then I ended up doing the last tour. And I went, oh shit, I should probably write about, because when I do stand up, I don't like to hinge on the wrestling. I would like to go where no one knows that I'm a wrestler, and I want to do, you know what I mean? I don't want to rely on any of that. And then he was like, do you want to open for me? And blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, fuck, I better write some wrestling shit. And that's where it all came out of. And I loved doing it. And now, of course, as you know, both wrestling and comedy, the industries have been ravaged. And I'm like, well, you know what? Let me just burn them and put them on YouTube in little chunks of whatever and keep writing. But it is true. I mean, because I love watching the old shows and go, what did I, what was I doing? What was I thinking?
Yeah. I'm like that a lot with wrestling and some movies, like I watched, like, what was the movie when I was a kid? I just found it. I have a VHS, Night Patrol. When I was a kid, that was with the unknown comic, Murray Langston. He was just himself in the movie. I was like,
that's a good Twitter, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, I'll have to look it up. But I would watch that movie. When I was a kid, it was the funniest fucking movie. I just watched it recently. And I was like, ooh.
Yeah, that sucks when those things don't age well. I was so nervous.
I watched some old WWF TVs from when I was a kid. I watched it religiously, and some of the enhancement guys in the ring and some of the action in the ring, like the ropes are super fucking. I'm like, ooh. It's a good thing I was young when I got into wrestling.
Sometimes when I put it on, and my wife will like watch it with me, like if I just have it on and I have the network on, I'm watching like, something from 92 or like whatever, or just random something in the 80s. And that's one of the things she'll always point out things that like I guess never really occurred to me, but she'll just be like, wow, their ropes are really, really loose. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, they really are. And then there'd be like the enhancement guys were, I mean, you knew who your star was and who your star wasn't. Yeah. But like some of these people, me and my friends, when we were kids, we used to call them wimps. Like we didn't know we didn't have jobbers or whatever. Right. But we were like, I guess, smart enough to know like these are the wimps. Like, so it'd be like, oh, I didn't watch Superstars yesterday. What happened? Oh, the Berserker faced one of the wimps, and it's like, and then that's when Barry Horowitz started getting a push. And it was like, wait a minute, can something like this happen? But I even had like an action figure, and as a kid that I used it was a little American Gladiator figure, but it was like super tiny. And I used to just use him as Pez Whatley. And and I gave him he had an IC title run. Like I really gave him like a big push. And I don't know why, but for whatever reason, cause he was like, you had your local talent, and then you had your guys that were, the Barry Horowitz, the Pez Whatley, the Iron Mike Sharp, like, those guys that were there.
Speaking, I did want to bring this name up, and he's not an enhancement talent. He was a guy who I loved, and I'm like, why aren't more people talking about him? It's fucking Chili Willy.
Chili Willy was awesome, man. He, I only got to know him through that brief run in ECW. I went back to ECW right before they folded, but he was a legit badass too. Yeah. Like he had the best gimmick. He would come out and they would announce him from that city he was in. He goes, "Everybody's homeboy, Chili Willy," because he was from all around the world and stuff like that. But he had a great run, and then like after ECW, I think he moved down to like the Bahamas or something like that. He moved to some warm weather country, which I'm kind of envious. But and
that's the reverse of like when you watch old stuff and you're like, these guys are shit. He was the guy I watched. And I'm like, oh fuck, he was really good.
Yeah. Dude, I remember when the XPW thing happened, when XPW showed up for the ECW show, he was like the first guy out the curtain throwing fucking hands at people and stuff like that. And I was like, that's a bad motherfucker. Just knocking people out and shit.
I was really only familiar with him from ECW.
Yeah, I got to do one spot with him where they had me kiss him. Oh. Because I was doing the Blue Boy gimmick and they wanted me to be I don't know, androgynous. I don't know, whatever. Paul was like kissing.
Androgynous, yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. I was trying to think of that was my 25.
You ever get that great Booker thing where like they explain to you the reasoning behind the shit for like 10 minutes and you're like, look, I'm just gonna go out and do the fucking thing. Like no one will know this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I don't
Here's
worry
your
about
character's psyche. Here's why. Here's your motivation for it. It's like, yeah, I'm just gonna do it.
Yeah.
Like Paul explained that I was going to kiss. We were going to kiss, and then we just like Paul left, and we just looked at each other like, we ain't doing that shit, right? And like Tommy was like our union boss. We went to Tommy. We're like, hey Tom, the whole kiss thing. I don't know. So Tommy went to talk to Paul, and Paul came back and demonstrated to me how to kiss him without our lips touching, and just put my hand over his mouth and kiss him. Yeah. I was like, man, this still kind of sucks, but you know. I guess we'll just fucking do it. Just do the fucking thing.
I did an indie show once when I was like first starting, and this guy, the booker, gave me just this huge 20-minute speech of what he wanted me to do in my promo and blah, 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 like this whole thing. And I remember doing the promo, getting backstage, and he walked up to me and he went, that wasn't what I wanted, but I loved it. And I was like, well, I really can't help you right now.
Oh man,
dude, I went to. You just reminded me of a fucking thing. Me and Stevie got booked to do this fucking show in California. It was at a wine and cigar banquet. It was a fucking banquet at the Biltmore Hotel in downtown Los Angeles.
Sure.
And we get there, and it's like, what the fuck? And it was going to be me and Stevie against Christopher Daniels and Bobby Bradley. And the promoter pulls us apart, and we're in where the ring is and stuff like that. The guy goes, I want you guys to go out there and have a really stiff match and just beat the shit out of each other and all this stuff. And we're just like, and we walk away like, what the fuck's he talking about? And we planned out the match. We were going to have a nice light match and stuff like that. And the long of the story, the short of the story is the match never happened because halfway through this match, you have a bunch of guys in fucking tuxedos, cummerbunds with wives and gowns and stuff. They're trying to have this pro wrestling stuff. These guys are getting fucking loaded, and they start whipping fucking those marble ashtrays into the fucking ring, trying to hit the wrestlers with these fucking ashtrays, and they're throwing salt and pepper shakers. They're like, all right, we're cutting the show short. You're still getting paid, blah, blah. They gave me my check and all this stuff. But like, it's like the most bizarre show I ever done. I was up until that, I'd done like a show in a car lot. And then here I am in like the Biltmore Hotel watching this, like Johnny Legend was there. Like, I don't know if anybody's familiar with Johnny Legend. Like, he's like this like folklore, this urban legend guy in wrestling. And he just passed away recently. He did a lot of stuff in Hollywood. He was there and he was doing stuff. It was like, so goofy and so surreal. Felt like a fever dream. But, and then we left there. We flew back to Philly. Rob Van Dam was on our flight. We did the show. We landed in Philly, and then we had to drive straight to Jim Thorpe, Pennsylvania. We get RVD in the car. We get there in just enough time to throw in our trunks and run to the ring. And Stevie wrestled Johnny Smith. So we do this bizarre show, fly back to Philly from Los Angeles on a red eye, got no sleep. We landed like 4 p.m, have to drive 2 hours, get to Jim Thorpe, and literally walk in the building, throw on my tights, scribble in my face, and we just run to the fucking ring, and that was it. It's like one of the weirdest.
Speaking of weird, let's talk about fucking Jim Thorpe for a minute. What a weird ass place that is.
Have you been there?
I have been there because when we used to take family road trips to like Delaware and Virginia to see family, and we would, my mom's big thing was, let's stop in these small towns and whatever, and like let's extend the fucking trip was like her thing. But we would have to see these places, and one of the places was Jim Thorpe, and I think it's called like the Sweden or something of Pennsylvania because it's all in the hills.
Yeah.
Do you know the story of Jim Thorpe? Like why it's named Jim Thorpe?
No.
Okay, I guess because Jim Thorpe's from there.
Well, yeah, no. Jim Thorpe was like, and one of those athletes back in the day where like you could ace it in every sport.
He was like Bo Jackson.
Yes, exactly. And he had a I think he had a bunch of wives and he ended up in debt and blah, blah, blah. And he's not from there at all. His last widow sold his body and name to this town who was looking for money to be like a tourist gimmick. And they said, we'll bury the body here in the hills, wherever the hell it is, and you can call the place Jim Thorpe. Meanwhile, of course, it was originally like a native town. Like, of course, we were that horrible. It's so ridiculous, right? And there's a big, what do we call it? And blah, blah, blah. But when I was there was a vintage emporium of weirdness. And this guy had this insane collection of Dark Shadows memorabilia.
Nice.
Lunch boxes and like a big portrait of Barnabas Collins. And I was just like, this is the weirdest place I've ever been to in my life.
That is so weird.
I just went on a ghost tour of Jim Thorpe like a couple of years ago because it's supposed to be super haunted and there's like a haunted prison there and stuff like that. Yeah, but like we wrestled there on the mountaintop, which they just put the building up for sale for like $600,000. I was like, good luck with that. But the building was like in this nightclub on top of a hill, and the locker room was in like this side building, but it was like off the side of the hill. I was like, dude, at any moment, ECW is kaput if one of these fucking stilts holding up this locker room decides to fucking shit the bed. And eventually they moved this to an outer part where it was less likely to
slide.
Yeah. Well, dude, there was a shoot that happened, Dudley's against the Gangsters, and it was like the early Dudleys. It was Dudley and Dances with Dudley. And Dances with Dudley and New Jack got into it. And and Dances with Dudley, was getting into it or whatever. And then after the match, New Jack goes to the locker room and he's waiting for Dances with Dudley. Dances with Dudley comes through the thing and New Jack fucking punches him. Well, when he punches him, he bumps into Mikey Whipwreck and Mikey Whipwreck almost went out the fucking window. Somebody had to fucking go and grab Mikey by the back of his tights and pull him back through the window because he just would have went tumbling down the fucking mountain like the girl from Little House on the Prairie. Just fucking... Well, there's Mikey.
Speaking of Little House on the Prairie, this is a good segue.
Yeah.
Michael Landon, at the end of that show, when they canceled it and they knew they were ending, the network was like, we're gonna keep the set and everything because we want to, because it was a big set, and if we ever use Western films or films of that era, we can use it and sell it for cheap and blah blah blah. And Michael Landon was so pissed, and that's where he wrote into the last episode that basically the whole place gets blown up. He was like, "Fuck you guys."
That's hilarious.
Yeah. And then there's the sad things like that. It's like the Batman show, the TV show.
Yeah.
It only has a couple of seasons, and it was gonna get it was huge in syndication. It was gonna get picked up again, but then they realized whoever owned the sets had already destroyed them all, and they're like, well. This is too expensive, and we're not going to do it.
Which is ridiculous. That's so ridiculous. And that they always, obviously, I'm sure you know this, that shot of them getting out of the car and running into the building was one time. It was the same shot every single episode. Yeah. So this isn't, I guess this is a show that liked to save money, but
yeah. Well, if you're spending all your money on Zsa Zsa Gabor.
Well, there was a show where I forget. I don't know what the show was, but they used the Brady Bunch set. It was like the show. You watch it and you're like, "That's the Brady Bunch house." But they used it before the Brady Bunch, and then Brady Bunch came along. And they used the exact same house with the exact same stairwell and all that good stuff. I think I would say Barnaby Jones or something like that. But
there were 2 backdoor pilots of Empty Nest on Golden Girls.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one was Paul Dooley and I think Rita Moreno. They were the next door neighbors. Like it was a totally different. Originally, Empty Nest was going to be totally different.
Yeah.
And then they still kept the same kitchen set for Richard Mulligan. They're like, you know what? We already have it. Let's just swap it out, and we'll never mention Paul Dooley again.
Wow. I know there was like the first episode of Hanging with Mr. Cooper. I think was like in the Seavers' old house from Growing Pains. But it was like weird. Like I always remembered it as like they bought the house, and like I definitely merged memories from the finale of Growing Pains and the premiere of Hanging with Mr. Cooper. And like I made it more of a connection than I think it really was.
Right.
But then there's like the Saved by the Bell set, I think was reused in a couple of the Bayside set was reused a few times. But I was always do you ever see Saved by the Bell Wedding Las Vegas?
Oh, yes.
So I was such a big fan for when they would, I guess visually, I don't know that it always worked story-wise, but when they would take like a live audience comedy show and then redo it as like a film.
Yeah.
And being able to see, like, I remember the Zach Morris in his bedroom in that, but it's like a real set, like as opposed to just like the cheap little TV set. Like that stuff always popped me. And I don't know why, I was just always like thought that was so cool. Cause it would make something come to life just like that much more.
Right. Or even the weirdness of like when Full House would go to Disney and they would be filming on location. And I'm like, I'm not used to seeing Bob Saget like this. He's a television tape kind of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
You ever seen him live?
No, I mean, I haven't seen him live,
but
I've seen, yes. And good for him for making the turn to family and then managing to turn back.
Yes. I had told the story on here once before that I went to, Bob Saget and my great uncle have like a mutual friend. And so my great aunt and uncle invited
Saget
me
from Philly, right?
Yeah. Invited me to go see him at the Keswick. And I was like, okay, cool. And I hadn't seen his act before. And I'm sitting there with my great aunt and uncle, these two just old Jewish people. And they also had never seen his set. And I mean, he was going into a lot of detail about the things that he would like to do with Kimmy Gibbler. And it was very, very much what you'd expect if you're familiar with Bob Saget as a stand-up comedian. It was so awkward. But then I got to meet him afterwards and he was like the nicest guy. And like shook my hand and then he's like, I'm sorry, I have a cold if I'm sounding. And I'm like, oh great. Now I'm going to get sick from Bob Saget. And like, no one's going to believe me that this is where my cold came from. And like, it was traumatic in that regard, but yeah, it was a tough thing sitting through some of that next to my Aunt Reba. It was definitely not what I was looking forward to that night.
How is Reba? Is she doing well?
She's well. Every once in a while I hear from her.
Yeah. Well, next time you speak to her,
I'll say RJ City says hello, and she'll probably go, oh, that's very nice. Tell him I said hi. I have no idea.
She'll say, oh, the guy who talks about Mama's Family.
Dude, one time George Carlin was coming out with a new HBO special, and me, Mrs. Meanie, and Mama Meanie were sitting in the living room waiting to watch it. It's like, hey, Ma, you want to watch George Carlin? Oh, I love George Carlin. He's so funny. And that's how she talked. Oh, he's so funny. Oh, I can't wait to watch. Fucking George Carlin comes out. First thing out of his fucking mouth. You know what they don't talk about anymore? Pussy farts. And my mom stood right up and goes, Brian, I'm going to bed. So,
that's amazing. See,
so your Bob Saget story reminded me of that George Carlin.
My mother was very much the opposite. And there was no real limits on that no real level of decorum when it came to comedy. And I remember us watching The Aristocrats in the movie theater. Nice. And it was this small town in New York, and there was a bunch of old people there. And I just remember watching them get up and leave after 5 or 10 minutes. And I went, great.
Yeah, I remember seeing that in the theater as well, somewhere down in Philly, and there were definitely people who stood up and left. One of our friends was like, I went with like a bunch of friends, and we all thought it was hilarious, and one of them was like, he was like personally offended, and like, what? Like, how can you be?
Yeah.
And like, yeah, he didn't find it funny, but he has no sense of humor, so.
I'm fortunate that the humor gene leapfrogged over my grandma into me, because she had no problem with me watching the George Carlin stuff and all that Sam Kinison stuff, shit like that. When I was 16, I snuck in to see Sam Kinison twice.
He's a guy I look back on and I go, where are the jokes here?
Right. Right. But when you're a kid, you're like, oh, he's screaming.
Yeah, I mean, he was a fun character, just like a ball of energy and whatever. And now I'm like, this guy did no work at all. He just
yeah, man, it was bizarre. I mean, like my friend won tickets off the radio, and like we're 16 and we're like, all right, and we just show up and we had our like our Chester, molester mustaches. And our shitty facial hair, and they didn't even question us. We got in, we sat in the booth. Like I said, walk in like you belong, sat down. And then next time we didn't have tickets. We just walked in. Amazing. Nobody questioned us. We sat down and pretty much did the same set. So
yeah.
I mean, it's like, that's kind of cool to think about, how my life would be different. My grandma said, you got to stop listening to that George Carlin stuff or all the blue comedy,
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Yes. Well, that's what killed Red Fox. He worked too blue.
Yeah, you don't have to wash your whole ass. You just gotta wash your asshole.
I mean, that stuff is unreal. Red Fox's stuff. You're like, this to even do it now, and not to say that it's politically incorrect. Just like the sexual stuff is like, oh my god.
Yeah.
And coming from a man of like that age, and then yet also very cool.
Yeah, and then And then he had the crossover appeal of, Sanford and Son, where, and stuff like that. It's probably the Bob Saget effect. Oh, here's the guy from Sanford and Son. You go, he's talking about washing assholes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, but you know what? At least his character on Sanford and Son was like a, kind of crotchety old, like, it wasn't like Bob Saget was like America's dad, and like just running around vacuuming things, like, and now he's instead now he's talking about what was this one thing, like the person, like they didn't have an eye, so he saw that as an opportunity. Like it was like a whole, like that was during the Aristocrats thing, I think. But
I also, it's funny to think about like Dave Coulier, who then it's like, oh no, that's kind of who he is.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, that's what you do.
He was like, and Dave Coulier was like he was the voice of so many. I know he like voiced Peter Venkman for a few seasons, and he like, I think he did like a bunch of voices at like a time. Like they would always have someone else, and then they'd be like, oh, we got to get rid of this person. Oh, we'll bring Dave Coulier in, he'll do the voice. And like,
I saw him at an arcade bar I was at in Detroit. And he was there with two women, and it was not entirely clear which one was his girlfriend. And I went,
maybe both.
Good for Dave. Maybe Dave keeps his business off the stage. And I say, good for you, sir.
Yeah. I just want to know what he did to Alanis Morissette to elicit her to write You Ought to Know. I mean, because he was that clean-cut guy on the show and stuff like that. Like, I mean, she's writing this song. I'm just like, God damn, Dave, what the hell did you do?
It's not about him, but...
It's not?
Doesn't he say it's not about him?
Of course he says it, but
yeah,
he's got an act to protect. He has an image to uphold.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough. Yeah, the only image I have is him and Alanis Morissette in a theater, and I just want to know what were they watching, But you got to know the lyrics to that song to get that reference. So.
Wrong button.
Wrong button. Yeah, you're going for more of the where is? Oh God, I can't even control this thing. Here we go. That's what you were going.
Yeah.
For.
There you go.
Yeah, one of those things. Hey, I'm gonna go to. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go to commercial, and then when we come back, I'm gonna talk about the commercial with RJ City. How's that sound?
Oh, great! Right. Is it the Tom Selleck reverse mortgage one?
No, we don't. We don't get big sponsors like that. Here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Retro Mania Wrestling.
Hey, Meanie, do you remember playing some old school wrestling arcade games?
Oh, absolutely, man. I spent many hours in the old arcade as a kid, spending endless quarters for endless hours.
Well, now, guess what? They're back. The old school style wrestling game is back with Retromania Wrestling. Retromania comes to you from Retrosoft Studios, which is a video game development company creating modern games with a retro feel. Retromania Wrestling is the official sequel to the 1991 arcade hit WrestleFest, and it's set to be released for the PC, Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, and Xbox One.
Dude, I've spent so many hours playing the original WrestleFest in the arcade. Now I get to be a part of the official sequel, and that is amazing.
The roster is stacked. From Hawk and Animal, the Road Warriors, to Tommy Dreamer, Nick Aldis, Colt Cabana, Johnny Retro, Matt Cardona, Brian Myers, and so many more. And as you mentioned, the BWO. That's right, all three of you for the first time ever in the same game, the Blue Meanie, Big Stevie Cool, and Hollywood Nova. But there's more. The man announcing all of you to the ring, well, it's this voice you're hearing right now. That's right, Josh Shernoff, me. I will be the official ring announcer of Retromania Wrestling. So go to retromaniawrestling.com now and pre-order this game. All right, so, RJ, at one point you said something online that I wanted to bring this up. You said something about being in a video game. And that created an entire back and forth with Randy Orton, which was one of most enjoyable things to read. Where did that end? Because I feel like, was he the one who, like, did he have the final word and you just kind of let it lie there? Or
I think it was me saying, first of all, he tried to get me. So I was irritated. There's some weird, like, a bunch of people are trying to make video games, and I'm not, like, Retromania was like the first one of like the modern round of this. Yeah. It was cool, and then there's these bunch of other ones popping up, and they're like, "Look, I'm gonna be in a game." It's like no one has seen one screenshot of anything. Like, some of them sound like Ponzi schemes. I'm like, guys, like, fucking relax. And so then it turned into that stage. Yes, and it turned into it was not targeted at him at all, which is hilarious.
Right.
And then it ended with, he tried to get me to make fun of, he tried to weaponize me to make fun of AJ Styles believing in the flat earth theory. And that's when I told him that, you know, his tweet psychology was all over the place and he needed to slow down and let it breathe. That was probably the best thing. And then since then, and it's very weird, you know, what you learn about people based on what tweets of mine they like. Mm-hmm. He liked a joke tweet I made about Diane Lane. And one about Jim Carrey doing Joe Biden on Saturday Night Live and just saying, no one's going to remember Fire Marshal Bill. I can do the same face. It's not a big deal. So I was just like, very interesting. So yeah, but I always go back to, like, you know, people are like, oh my God, that's so weird. And it's like, man, I was like blocked by Trump 4 years ago. Yeah. And since then, none of this is weird. Like, I'm aware people can read my stuff.
So how did that happen? What was the tweet that got you blocked?
So I would often reply to his stuff because I realized when you verified, your replies stay at the top, which is great. He was always a great setup for a punchline.
Yeah, still is.
Well, see, so his tweet was, the tweet that did it was, he was railing about, I don't know, CNN, NBC, MSNBC, whatever. And I wrote, what about WKRP in Cincinnati?
That's so harmless.
Yeah, right? And then the next day, someone had quoted a tweet of his, and I couldn't see it. And I clicked on it. It's like, you're blocked. And I'm like, you know, I had to check it 5 times. And then I'm like, am I under investigation? Like, the fuck? And then it was his first wave of mass blocks. And I got invited into this little secret Twitter group of everyone he blocked. And they were all like journalists and comedians and writers. And I'm like, oh my God, this is like the Friars Club. And this is amazing. And then New York Magazine called me and they're like, we want to interview for blah, blah, blah. And then they did an interview with like a bunch of people that he blocked. And my quote was in between Stephen King and Rosie O'Donnell.
That's amazing.
I was like, all right, this is okay. I think I can live with this. But I'm also happy that I said my piece. I got blocked. My stance is known early on, and then I'm like, and then it got much worse. Like I would not be replying to his shit now because it's.
First of all,
I don't think
who has the time?
Who has the time? And I'm exhausted by it, and I don't even see them now. Right. Yeah. So I'm like, this is probably the best thing for my own mental health.
I got blocked by Dave Meltzer.
Okay.
Because I tweeted asking him to, I tweeted a couple times asking him to give a star rating for Meanie Toons, and he just ignored me. And then Joel Gertner, who I love Joel, and he tweeted out something about how someone needs to get him in contact because Dave Meltzer no-sold him on getting contact information. And I said, he no-sold us on Meanie Toons as well. But if you maybe say something bad about a New Japan match and he'll respond. And he blocked me. And that was it. So
he actually retweeted a couple weeks ago one of my Munsters episodes.
Yeah.
The Munster wrestling episodes. I was like, oh shit. I don't know you, but like that's nice.
Yeah. I didn't know he and I had heat. But apparently,
well, now you do.
Apparently, yeah. So then I blocked him back.
There was going to be a roast of Ric Flair a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And David Arquette was going to be at it, and he got me to write his jokes. The roast, I think Rick ended up in the hospital before the thing.
Yeah, and then he wasn't able to travel.
Right. So, but I was like, let's do this. And one of my favorite jokes was David's the only David's movies have the same star ratings as his matches. I'm sure Dave Meltzer would have liked Scream a lot better if they filmed it in the Tokyo Dome. that was my favorite one. And but I'm happy he didn't do them because I'm like, these sound like me. He was very nervous about it. David's not a mean person.
So
he sounds like a nervous person too. So.
But also, I was talking to you about this. The Randy Orton thing. The Brooklyn Brawler blocked me. Because I think he thought it was a shoot.
So I brought this up just because I want, for anyone who isn't familiar with it, so Orton responded to your tweet having nothing to do with him because you said stop asking when I'm going to be in a wrestling video game. Maybe ask the video game companies when they're going to pay a deserved price for my charismatic likeness compared to every other bloated asshole on the rosters, which I thought was hilarious in and of itself.
Sounds like somebody was insecure about being bloated.
Right. So he writes back, question, am I a bloated asshole? Seriously, want to know. If I am, then please guide me to a professional nutritionist. I don't want to be not in a video game because I am bloated. Shit, heard the cover of the 2K shit banks 6 figures. Wait, checking. Yes, in fact it does. Blowing kiss emoji.
Which is such a Joe Pesci response.
Yes. But your response, I'm not going to go through everything, but your response had me literally laughing out loud when I read it, where you go, Randy opens the fridge, the words of my tweet still whirling in his head. He looks at the leftover pastrami sandwich and speaks softly, hey, nothing you can say. Nothing's going to change what you've done to me. Now it's time to shine. Going to take what's mine. Take what's mine. And it goes on from there, talking about the voice in the head. But that was one of my early introductions to your Twitter feed.
Oh, wow.
And I believe that was when I was like, follow. All right. I don't know what's going on with this RJ City guy, but obviously I was familiar with you and heard of you, but I wasn't following you on Twitter until that happened. And I was like, definitely following on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it's been a pleasure ever since.
Thank you. But I think the great secret is I have no idea what's going on either.
That's the recipe for our podcast. So
yeah.
Pretty much.
It's clear. That's obvious. But after the Trump stuff and then the David Arquette stuff, it's kind of the timeline is out of whack in the documentary. Mm-hmm. My shit with him on Twitter started before they even started filming and before I even knew they were going to make a documentary. David was just thinking about it. And his friend is a fan of mine, and he's like, follow this guy. So we tweeted back and forth because he's into the same shit. His family's been actors for forever.
Yeah.
And then all of that started for real. And he certainly thought it was real. And his sisters thought it was real because they got involved. And then I'm like, okay, you people are just weird. But the one person that has not responded to any of my tweets ever, despite me incessantly trying, has been Vicki Lawrence, speaking of Mama's Family. It's really pissing me off. BB Newirth responds. I mean, Mario Cantone, we became friends over Twitter. And Vicki, what the fuck are you up to?
Is she still actively tweeting, though? Like, are you seeing, like...
Well, I feel like, maybe her nephew operates her account or something. You know what I mean?
Kind of like Roseanne Barr's son does her Twitter or something like that.
And whoever's doing the Iron Sheik's Twitter... who did not retweet when we had our Sheiky Shower episode, and we tagged them and they didn't retweet.
What's so weird is that the Virgil Instagram commented on one of my pictures. They don't follow me.
It's so weird.
I always find that weird when somebody likes my stuff, but they're not following me. It's like, how did they find me? Or something like that.
I found it weird. Thankfully, it's grown since then. But for our first couple of weeks, we had more Twitter followers than we did listeners of the pod.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are you following? And I'm not talking about Meanie. I'm talking about the Mind of the Meanie podcast Twitter.
Right.
And I'm like, well, the only fun thing we do on this Twitter is promote that we have a show coming up or that we've just aired a show. Why do we have more followers than we do listeners? And thankfully, like I said, over time that's changed. But like, in the beginning, I'm like, look at this. I'm like, I don't understand. That doesn't make sense. Why are you here? Don't follow us. Don't follow us. Just, you're not going to be entertained by just our Twitter. Like, But there are people who will like things and not necessarily engage in them. Mm-hmm. Because I know when I do Coffee and Underwear and then I will clip something I like and then I'll tweet it out, that will do really well. And a lot of people, like when Matt Cardona was like, oh, I want to be on Coffee and Underwear and blah, 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 kept asking me. I was like, oh, okay. Because I don't want to impose on people and ask them. But like, if you're asking, like, it would be okay. And then he was like, oh, so like, I was like, yeah, so I'll put this up Sunday. And he's like, oh, you put them up on Sunday? And I was like, oh, you've never seen the show at all.
Right.
You just heard about
the tweets and whatever and sound like it's fun. But that's good. It's especially Twitter with wrestling people has like a whole different reach.
Yeah.
For some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is interesting. And I mean, there's so much truth to that. There are tons of things that I will like because it's kind of cool, but I'm not going to then do a deep dive into whatever it's promoting.
Right.
But, hey, you're liking it, you're retweeting it, and that's support, So we, we always say we appreciate anyone who spends 2 seconds even thinking about our show. We appreciate that.
I appreciate you coming on.
Well, certainly. I'm so happy we could do this. And it's a little like, it's fun to have you in the chats and your lady friend.
Yeah.
When I do my YouTube stuff, it's so nice.
Sometimes I'll be in there and I'm like, am I commenting too much or am I texting too much? And I always feel like, shit, it's RJ's thing. I don't want to kind of like fucking hog up the spotlight at all, But
no, it's always just like, because I come in with no plan.
Community.
Yeah, there's such nice people. And then I love how, David will pop in and out the same way. And then for some reason, people feel in this little community like it's okay to be wildly honest. And it's so nice, especially the After Dark stuff. Like that's different stuff I wanted to, talk about, weird stuff.
And that's where I kind of feel like maybe I overshare sometimes in the chat.
No, it's so good. I love it. And then people will just start sharing things. And there's people who I don't know, but I'm happy to like break them down and be like, oh my God.
And that's like, we've been able to kind of have that like right now. So I see comments going on from the people from our Patreon who are which we call our pod squad, who are watching this now. And sometimes we'll interact with them. And sometimes they're just kind of chatting to each other. But it's really cool. They'll share some stuff. We'll share some stuff. And then sometimes we'll talk after we're done recording the regular podcast. But I think that's fun. Anytime you can create a community, like you talked about Matt Cardona, his podcast, I recently joined their Patreon so I could kind of like just check out their Facebook group and see whatever. And dude, it is I ended up buying something from somebody yesterday. Like, it is such a cool group of people. And it's something that Meanie and I from day one wanted to be able to do here and just build our pod squad. And we really have, like, it's so crazy because, like, I personally, some of these people have met Meanie before. I personally have not met anyone except for, I think maybe there's one guy, Nick Newman, who has his own podcast, Rock and Wrestling Podcast, which I was a guest on this past week. But I've met him. But other than that, I've never met anyone. But I feel like I've gotten to know everybody so much, and it's really cool. And which brings me to, at this point, we normally at this point in the show would do a thing called Ask Meanie. And we did have some questions. Maybe some of our pod squad that's here has questions, and it could be an Ask Meanie anything, and maybe Ask RJ City if anyone has any questions for him as well. But
and thank you for being on this long, man. I know we're a little long-winded.
No, it's a pleasure. I'm happy to block out the time and vibe with some fun guys.
Awesome. All right, well, here we go.
You're definitely an inspiration for, like, how you should be in wrestling, like social media wise, and having a side hustle and stuff like that. Like I always tell kids, these kids, it's more than what you do in the ring. You got to have a side hustle. You got to have a good social media presence and online presence and stuff like that.
And maybe it's just because I became more familiar with your stuff post pandemic, or I guess mid pandemic. But I've looked, and I've said this to me before. Like I've looked at what you've done. And I'm like, this guy his stock is going to be so much higher when everything returns than it was before, because you've taken advantage of this time. You didn't just sit back and disappear, Yeah.
No, Meanie said it best, and I keep bringing it up when he was like, man, you've been really killing it during this pandemic. And I thought, gee, yeah, the world had to light on fire for me to finally figure it out.
But you've provided entertainment for people in a time when they need entertainment. They need that escape,
I hope. I mean, I certainly need it. And I certainly have the time on it. And that's my own thing, and it is selfish and shitty to say, but I'm literally just trying to keep myself entertained.
And that's something...
and then if people can join in and enjoy it too, I'm like, well, that's even better.
And that was like with Meanie and I we decided to start the podcast a few weeks earlier than we were originally planning. And I'm glad we did, because if we were originally like, oh, things are kind of locking down, we'll just wait until it's over. And then, we would never...
It was supposed to be a 2-week thing.
Yeah.
Because we were actually supposed to go into a studio and do all this stuff together. And it's just like, he's like, man, I think we should just, start it. And
because all the TV shows started dropping off before their season finales had even aired, like all this stuff. And I'm like, you know what? People are kind of looking for entertainment and something fun and something ridiculous. So yeah, and I think it was just such an awesome decision to do, because we really have, so many people have told us like, oh, this has been such a help during this time, because I was just, locked down, going out of my mind. And Meanie and I have kind of just been like, this is such a help to us, because I don't know what, especially during that prime time of us being like really locked down and no one was going anywhere, didn't know how long that was lasting. Maybe it should have even lasted a little longer, but that's a, different story. Right. But it this was like, Meanie and I would be like, oh, thank God it's Saturday. We can do this show. We can feel like we're talking to each other and the Patreon members, and talking to all the people listening, and like, oh, it's so refreshing. But
I mean, for me in Toronto, it's a little different. The lockdown was stricter and longer, and we got let out for a bit, and now we're just kind of going back to like reduced stage. Mm-hmm. There's been like a handful of indie shows that were really small and whatever, and I just remember going to one and saying like, you know what, like, no, like I got to do other shit, and I think people want other shit too. Like, there's got to be a different way out of this.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely different than what's been going on. But Meanie, you ready for an Ask Meanie Anything?
Yes. It's time to ask Meanie anything.
All right. So we'll start off with Jim Stebbins from our pod squad, has a question. What is RJ's go-to game system and game?
I have a Sega Game Gear.
Nice.
Really?
That my uncle gave me. It was his, and he gave it to me, and I've been playing it since I was a little kid. It still works. I think it's MLB Baseball 93.
Nice.
It's you can just customize the outfits. It's really relaxing in like a playing golf kind of sense.
Yeah.
That I love playing Monday Night Raw on Game Gear.
Wow.
And what else have I been? Jessamine and Duke got me into like online gaming, like Steam and stuff like that, which I have no experience with. And then we're playing the new Serious Sam. I don't know if you ever heard of those games. It used to be an Xbox, like a run and gun kind of game. And then we also played the new Streets of Rage, which feels a lot like the old one. So those would be my go-tos.
Interesting. Meanie, what about you? Since it was Ask Meanie, I figure I'll ask you. Same question.
As far as gaming, I'm just a sports guy. I play baseball. I play MLB The Show, and I just do Road to the Show, where you make yourself. It's kind of like working the indies. You know, you start in the minors and work your way up and stuff like that. I'll play Madden, but Madden sucks anymore. I've become a professional game watcher with Mrs. Meanie. She plays Red Dead Redemption or something like that. Either way, she plays it and I watch and I go, "Hey, hon, can you kill that thing for me?" Okay.
So I'm sure she appreciates the backseat killer.
Yeah. Hey, can you skin that buffalo? Can you rob that train for me? And she'll play that. Like I was watching her play last night before I was going to bed. I'm laying there watching her. I'm watching her play this game like I'm watching a movie. Just like, yeah. Or she kills something and it lets out a guffaw. I'm like.
I used to something. I was so bad at video games.
He goes, ah! I'm like,
I was so bad at video games after I'd say maybe Nintendo 64 was where things started. Like it was too tough for me. Like my brain didn't work. So I would watch my brother play stuff sometimes because he was really good at that. But I remember like my friends would all get together and they'd all be like, "Oh, let's play GoldenEye," and I was like, "I can't." Like I'm just not good at this, and so I was just sit instead and play No Mercy and edit people's outfits. And that was it.
Yeah. I'm a big Fire Pro guy too.
Yeah. Here's a question comes from at Rusty_Shackelford. That then says at abales8. So I think their like profile name is different than their actual Twitter name. I don't know how that works. But anyway, they said, what are one or two things you would have changed about the ECW, WCW invasion angle that may have helped it succeed? So I think that's kind of a fun one that we can all talk about here. But Meanie, you want to begin?
Oh my God. I would have had ECW have its own show, with the ECW originals and stuff like that. Because if you're just having like an invasion kind of thing, it's just like you got to make it look like they're not part of the roster. You know what I'm saying? Started like a separate LLC, a separate trademark, set up a separate home office, stuff like that to make it look like ECW's legit, a separate entity. So when they're invading, it feels like there's invaders invading, not guys who are already in roster invading their own roster kind of thing. It kills it. You know what I'm saying? Just like, oh, well, they're on the roster, so they're just doing a storyline. But if you make it, if they were smart, they would have kayfabed them buying ECW. Like Shane legit wanted to buy ECW. Tommy Dreamer had, separate from Shane, Tommy had somebody who was going to buy ECW from Paul, and Paul said no. But if like you could have had like this mystery, like say you have Tommy Dreamer buys it, and with his company, and then like he's on the side with WWE and they're funding it, but he's still invading. You could do the invasion that way. It looks more legit. It didn't. I mean, it looked great. My favorite part is when everybody's running down to make the save and they all turn around, and you realize, oh my God, it's all these CLB guys turning around about to turn. Mm-hmm. If they would have made it look like a separate entity was legit doing a shoot, run in invasion, That's how I would have done it. I would have kept the, purchasing ECW a secret, the best you could, and then have them invade that way to make it look more legit.
RJ, what about you?
I would have held off on ECW during the invasion and kept it WWF, WCW, that kind of thing, until I think the first ECW invasion kind of thing would have been One Night Stand. Those two One Night Stands were amazing pay-per-views. And I'm like, that's what ECW was, and that was the best cross-branding anything out of all the matchups. And then, WCW, it was like the WCW stuff barely got rolling, and then they added ECW, and then it was confusing,
Yeah.
So that's what I would have done, and more Scott Hudson on commentary.
For me, I think one of the things I would have done is I would have. I know a lot of people hated the WCW logo towards the end that they had.
I hated the ECW logo, so it was purple.
I would have gone back to the earlier heyday WCW, which I know wasn't necessarily like a beautiful logo, but it had the lineage behind it. I would have gone back to that. I would not have the fact that right off the bat they're invading wearing T-shirts with a WCW logo that doesn't make any sense, or let them use the logo that we just saw on the last Nitro. Let them use it for a little bit, and when you eventually create your own show, because I know they had talked about WWE moving to just having SmackDown and turning Raw into a WCW show. Whatever it is that they would have done, I would have hoped that maybe like that's when you start rebranding. In a way, that's kind of what they did with ECW. They just did it very poorly, because ECW, for the One Night Stands, that was ECW. That was their old open, their old logo. And then when they started on Sci-Fi, that's when they had like the razor blade behind the logo, and it kind of like went to hell from there. But at least the concept of, I had that been the only thing that was WWE-sized of that ECW, people would have forgiven the razor blade logo very easily. I think I would have loved to have just seen everything be different. They bought, like, I understand they didn't want the rings. They didn't like that they were smaller or whatever, but it was a big difference from the first One Night Stand to the second one. If you remember, in the first One Night Stand, it was a WWE ring, but they used the ropes and turnbuckle pads to look like the old ECW. And by the time you had the second One Night Stand, it was WWE ropes, and it was just blank WWE turnbuckle pads. And it was little things like that to me that were like, I didn't like that. That was too much of a change. I would have gone with like I would have kept them separate. I never would have done that WCW, I guess, backdoor pilot on Raw, where there was that horrible match. I also wouldn't have been like Booker T, Buff Bagwell, we're going to tear the house down with these two. Like, it was weird. It was a disaster. Like, and I also would not have said we need to get rid of WCW just because of one bad match. So I don't know. My feeling is I never would have combined them and done the whole like, the invasion angle with both teams and all that stuff. But I think it was such a missed opportunity. And unfortunately, I think those days are possibly gone. Although part of me is like, man, if AEW gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and if it's ever in a position where it's, outperforming WWE from a rating standpoint, the best thing that they could do to kind of stick it to AEW, who is like the unofficial sequel or unofficial revival of WCW, would be to bring back WCW. They could go ahead and just bring back WCW and have it be a show on their network or whatever, and they have all the rights to all of that stuff. And then it's like, okay, well, now who's the real WCW here? So I don't know. It's just my thought on it. Here's another question from Bill Alexander, joining us here. Says, next time you do another interview, you need to break out the kimonos. So if Meanie could do an impression of RJ and RJ do an impression of Meanie, what would that look like?
Dude, if I wish I could find a kimono in my size, but I don't think there's enough silkworms to make a fucking kimono in my size.
Bill Apter's auctioning them off. He's been auctioning off kimonos lately. Yeah.
They make his comb over.
So yeah, do you guys have impersonations of each other?
You know, the Charles Nelson Riley. You see, as I drink my cherry rhyme Ricky gimmick seltzer here. Vicky Lawrence, you know, she works in AEW now as Vicky Guerrero. What the fuck? I don't know, something like that.
My Meanie impersonation would be that reminds me of a story where I shit my pants.
Hey, stop shooting him. Jesus Christ.
That was a good one.
Is that obvious that yeah.
So Anthony Camarada asks, can RJ do some impressions? Meanie says he does some funny ones. Any funny impressions you want to do for us here, other than that spot on Blue Meanie impersonation you just did?
What do? I do like... Hey, there was two guys walking around with the short shorts and the half shirt. Then he came in and the guy got on the mic. He said, "Man, we're taking over." There's that. I do. I think my Christopher Walken is good because I picked a good speech of his from. I think it's from Catch Me If You Can. There were two mice stuck in a bucket of cream. The first mouse, he drowned in the cream, but the second mouse, he wouldn't give up, and he kept running, and he turned that cream into butter, and he walked out. And today, I consider myself that second mouse. So
that was great. Man. Okay. Jim Sevens wants to know the flavor that you were drinking, Meanie, and I actually want to know too because I think I never cracked mine open. So we do this, RJ, every week. We have seltzers.
Oh yes.
And I've got blackberry tangerine.
Get the fuck out.
Wegmans brand. Is that what you have?
Blackberry tangerine.
Yeah. I'm back to Wegmans.
Sorry, our menstrual cycles are aligning on the show.
Yeah. There you go. Go Birds. All right.
Well, actually, yeah. Hold on. My first one though was orange pineapple. So I'm two seltzers deep. Yeah. Two seltzers deep, buddy.
So Travis wants to know, Meanie.
Yes, dear.
What was the hardest thing about becoming a trainer?
Patience. And giving an honest opinion without sounding like an asshole. You know, just because when I broke in with Al. There's plenty of times I wanted to fucking quit, and like I would like take my first bump and just roll out of the ring and say "fuck this shit" and go sit down. And he'd walk in and he would talk to me in a fatherly way. What's wrong? Okay, and then he would just talk to me and get me back in the ring. So when I'm talking to any aspiring young wrestler, I try to talk to them in a way that they can absorb the knowledge and I could be honest, but also not being a dickhead, tell them what they did wrong at first and then bring them back, soften them, bring them back down with the stuff they did right, stuff like that, just trying to be brutally honest or just point out what they did wrong, but tell them how they could, do it better, next time. Because I have a lot of kids and I have kids in Ring of Honor, NXT, a couple in AEW, and I just try to tell them, I try to be the life coach. I could, this is a risk log, but I try to prepare kids for this business more mentally than anything because it's more of a mental. It doesn't matter how great you are in the ring, but if you can't handle life on the road or this and that and the other thing, You're not gonna. And I've seen some of the best indie wrestlers that were projected to be the best in the world sign with WWE, and they just couldn't handle being outside of their 30-mile radius.
Because the thing is, your actual in-ring match. Let's say they're on there, they're doing once a week a 6-minute match on TV. They're doing some house shows. That actually takes up such little of the time of your career there, or wrestling. And I mean, that speaks to indies too, and people who will travel for indies. Like you said, their 30-mile radius, you have a lot of people who they'll just stay in their area and do their shows. But people who are more used to being able to travel, maybe they're a little bit more used to that. But that's always, I remember always being told, that's the hardest part of the business. If you think, I remember Al saying that to all of us down in OVW. He was like, he's like, if you're up on the main roster and they give you a hard time that OVW, you get to just hang out here. He's like, you guys are on the road, 365 days a year because you're down here in Kentucky. You're not with your family. You're not, and yeah, I think that's definitely a good thing for you to be able to teach everybody. I remember one thing that Al, you talk about like the fatherly advice. I'll never forget the one time I had a match for OVW, and it was a house show, and I was not feeling my most in shape. So I wore a black tank top tucked into my tights. Like it wasn't great. And I come back after the match. I'm like, I get him. I'm like, how was that? And he's like, you still have the rash? I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, the rash on like your stomach and your chest and everything. You still have that rash? I'm like, I don't have a rash. He's like, then why the hell are you wearing that shirt? And I'm like, okay. That was like, it's kind of like, I'm like, I will not be wearing that anymore. Like, he's just making like a little joke about it, but what, but that always stood out to me because he was like, you could definitely have those kind of trainers who, like, he made like a funny thing of it, like, but you could have had the person, the hell are you wearing that for? Don't wear that. Why, but no, I think that's the part of training that is the sign of having a good trainer, is the person who's able to like kind of talk to you. And RJ, who trained you?
I was trained by, the first person I got in the ring with was a guy named John Rambo in Maryland when I was.
Oh, I know John.
Super, because my uncle was there and I was super young. There was a commission here. At the time in Ontario, and you couldn't start until you were 18 or whatever. And then I was trained here by Ruffy Silverstein, who was like in the first iterations of like Team Canada.
Okay.
In TNA, and he came up with Harry, Natty, and TJ. And then after that, I spent a lot of time with Rob Fuego too, who helped train like Gail and Trish and all that kind of thing. But then there's also people that are veteran people who are like, let me give back and whatever. Like Piper was one, and Nash was one, and I was like, shit, if I didn't have those people at like that time, who knows? And you're certainly one to be like, hey, like a very giving person. You really enjoy helping where you can for the business as a whole, and it's incredibly helpful because like I do think of some people who had bad trainers and whatever, and they were talented, but like they were not set right and had to figure shit out for themselves, and they were like, this is not for me.
Yeah. I mean, like, I know Meanie's talked about how obviously first training with Al, but all of the other people that have helped you along.
Al started me, but I'm a mutt because I trained with all these different people.
Which is great, and I think everyone should be.
And like how we talked, like I originally trained at the Wild Samoan Training Center with Afa, and various, Samu would be there, like various other people from that family. And then down in OVW, I always felt I never really trained more than like once or twice in the ring with Al. With him, it was I would go and help set up the ring and sit next to him at all the house shows, and he would just basically talk through every match, and that's why that didn't make any sense. And he'd like ask me like, should he have done that? What should he do now? And like or I would just listen to him talking to someone else during those matches and learn from him. But I got to train in the ring with like Nick Dinsmore and Joey Matthews and Rip Rogers and people like that. So yeah, it is kind of, I think that's, and all of them are right now, if they're listening to this, going, please don't tell people that I trained you. Someone could find one of your matches online. But no, I think that that's one of the best things you can do is be able to just be a sponge forever, for as long, like just keep learning from people. Like if I was like, hey, I'm going to get back in the ring, first thing I would do, first of all, is probably talk to my wife, who would say, do not do that. But no, I would want to make sure that I had as much information from as many other people as I possibly could. I wouldn't sit there and go, I got trained before, you know? You keep learning from anyone you possibly can. So, yeah.
Well, I learned more riding in cars with Al than he did. He taught me in the ring. I mean, he taught me holds and stuff like that, but hours upon hours in the car with him, I learned just as much or more.
All right, a couple last ones here. We've got at Mark Matsuo, or something like that, says, what does the Meanie think about the New Day getting split up after 6 years as a team? In WWE, a team being together that long is a rarity.
I think it's RJ City's fault. But,
Yeah, I kind of walked into it and I didn't realize. I thought it would be a fun thing to do when I did the mock draft and mess around with Woods, and then lo and behold, it was a real Twilight Zone episode.
Yeah.
Honestly, they could have had them do the split and not put them on different shows. To me, the New Day could have been like the Freebirds, where, you know, Woods and it could have been the, you know, to me, Big E's the Terry Gordy of the New Day. And, you know, back in the day, we see Terry Gordy, you know, break off from the Freebirds and, you know, challenge like a Ric Flair or become the UWF heavyweight champion and stuff like that. They still could have had, you know, the unit on the same show, just split off and go different ways and then come back and then split off again and
so
stuff.
Something that was interesting to me about that is that's what they did with Kofi when he won the world title. And, you know, for all those months, I mean, he was, you know, his New Day. Do you think that it's because they have a vision of what they want Big E to be and they want to break him away from New Day without some, you know, because how else do you do it? If they want to break him away and they say, I don't want him coming out to the New Day music, I want him to have his, like, you know, a separate identity from New Day, but we want him to be a baby face. I mean, the only other way, like, that, this is the best way, because you don't want someone to have to turn on someone else, and that kind of belittles what the New Day was. And so there's part of me that kind of looks at it and says, like, you know, I like this a little more. If you want him to be his own guy, you're almost like making it look like he's been forced to have to go off on his own now. You know, so I get that.
Well, you could have done it in like in a DX manner to where they had to, you know, there's the DX, the unit, but then like when the New Age Outlaws would go off, they would have their own separate music, separate entrance like that. But when they were with Hunter, they all came out to DX music, kind of, you know. I learned this from Raven in ECW, where, you know, me and Stevie would go out to the ring and we would use Raven's music. And Raven was like, could you guys maybe find another song to use? Because when my music hits, they think I'm coming out.
Right.
So we would have like, and that was our gateway to just be goofy. Like, you know, Raven would have his match, his music, and me and Stevie would come out to fucking Ghostbusters or Girls Just Want to Have Fun, and, or, you know, Bop or whatever, you know, wherever the least likely ring music you can imagine, you know, we would come out to it and stuff like that. They could do the same thing with New Day, where, you know, Big E has the Big E theme, you know, Xavier has a Xavier theme, Kofi has the Kofi theme, but when they're all together as a unit, they use the regular old New Day theme, you know.
Yeah.
That's my.
I had wanted to hear at WrestleMania. I was really actually hoping that Kofi, that the night that he won the title, I was really hoping he was going to come out to his old school theme just for that. I just thought that'd be so cool. But yeah. Well, all right. Well, that's our Ask Meanie session. RJ, I hope you enjoyed it.
I think this has been a great show. I'm happy. I'm so grateful that RJ joined us here today.
Very much.
I know
so.
we're a little bit long-winded here, as we usually do, and hopefully you didn't have other plans.
No, luckily for me, I have the time.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you every week when you have your, you know, RJ City After Dark and Coffee and Underwear, because it's just like, it's inspiring. Like, you do it for fun, but it really is inspiring for other wrestlers to say, hey man, you can be doing this too. You don't have to just do a tweet or a Facebook post or an Instagram post, all of which is good. You also have to sell yourself, and you sell your character and sell your identity. So when somebody finally goes to see you in person, they're related to the character. It's kind of like, how I used to, like, if this was the 80s and I saw you in a Bill Apter magazine, I know everything about you before I even see you in the ring. You're doing that same thing with your social media presence. And I really appreciate that.
I love when people would come up to the gimmick table and just talk about movies.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I think this makes, and then you realize, like, especially now when, like, oh, hey, this industry might not exist for a while. You got to realize, like, the stuff we're doing, like, the thing is the thing. Like, City After Dark, the coffee and underwear, like, that's my shit now. And, like, that's how I treat it. And that's how you guys treat this podcast. You're not doing this podcast to be like, hey, see me in Jim Thorpe. You're like, the podcast is the podcast now.
And the worst thing for us to do is, like, if we were strictly like a review show where we're reviewing, like, did you see Raw? It's like, well, fuck. Yeah. Sometimes I don't want to watch Raw. I don't want to have to be married to that. I want the show to be kind of like Seinfeld. It's a podcast about nothing, yet it's about everything. So
it's so easy to. I mean, this is such a what's that?
Pastiche.
I have no idea what you're saying.
A pastiche, an amalgamation of many different things.
There we are. But no, the wrestling podcasts, it is the most overcrowded, medium there is. Like, there are so many out there. And Meanie talks about, like, I don't want to, talk about Raw or SmackDown or whatever. There's so many people out there who have shows that do that, who do it better than we would. And so you kind of have to find, RJ, like what you have done, you found something that is your unique niche. If you're interviewing someone and have them on a show, like, are you the first person in the history of pro wrestling to have a show where you talk to another wrestler or something? No, absolutely not. But you do it your way. You make it your own unique thing. And that's what we've tried to do on our show is, like, we got into this. We certainly were not like, oh, a podcast with a wrestler and a co-host who talks to him about wrestling. Like, what a novel idea. Like, but we looked at it and said, how can we be as honest and just as much ourselves as we possibly can be, and just make, like, because that's the one thing, like it or not, you are not going to find another show that is like Mind of the Meanie or like any of your shows, RJ, that you do. You're just not going to, because we're making sure that it's just us, and that's it. And and you hope people like it, but you put it out there, and I mean, you've had a hell of a lot of success, and I applaud you for that, because you really have done, not to blow smoke here, but you really have done something that makes a lot of people look at it and go, like, wow, there's something outside of just, I'm a wrestler and I need to be on here just promote, like you said, like I just have to promote the next town I'm going to be in on my show, and that's what it's all about. Like, your thing is your own thing, and it's awesome.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having your own thing. And thank you for having my thing on your thing. And we could kind of rub things together.
Yeah, it was great. That's what we were hoping to do. We all just
campfire talk where we just rub each other things.
Yeah, we're all just roasting our marshmallows over an open flame. That's
but yeah, man, you're right. You're right in my wheelhouse with all your references and movies and stuff like that, and your inspiration to our thing and stuff like that. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
I love you to death, man. I know I tell you this too much. I don't want to be too stalkerish about it. I don't want any paperwork to be involved with my my love for you. But yeah, I definitely love you, man. You're great.
I like how you have a juggling clown lady partner, and you're the weird one. Thank you, though, for all your support. And I enjoy dissecting this episode on my various episodes of things.
Awesome. And give everybody kind of, because I think we'll let you go before we do our goodbye and hard sell on Patreon and stuff like that. We won't make you stay around for that, but
ProWrestlingTees.com/RJCity, Cameo.com/RJCity, where I could just talk to you personally. You can listen to me breathe. And YouTube.com/RJCity loves you. And that's the public you, not individually. Everyone at once.
And I can guarantee if you buy something, well, since RJ's a heel now, if you buy something from him, you will get a hateful tweet, hateful email.
Yes.
Belittling
really
you.
Somebody didn't realize I did that and got very upset once, but it was all worth it.
I printed yours out and framed it. So. But yeah, thanks, man. We won't keep you, but keep doing what you're doing.
We
And
won't keep you any longer than 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Fine, it's fine. It's all good. I'm going now. Say hi to Aunt Rita for me.
It's Reba, but yeah, I'll let her know.
What? Reba? What? Who the hell have I been talking to? Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much, man.
Hey, Meanie here. Here to talk about Mrs. Meanie's Blue Meanie Fun Packs over on Etsy. Go over to Etsy right now and search Pin for the Win. You can find Mrs. Meanie's Etsy shop where she has lots of great specialized Blue Meanie merchandise, from Blue Meanie stickers, the first ever BlueDust sticker, Mrs. Meanie's logo sticker, Mrs. Meanie's Clown Star holographic sticker, and my favorite, the I Dream of Meanie in the Bottle sticker. So if you go over there right now to Pin for the Win over on Etsy, you don't need to sign up to buy from Etsy, but you do just have to go over there and have a great appreciation for some custom-made Blue Meanie merchandise. She also has buttons, and right now we have all Etsy orders come with a mystery autograph 4x6 of the Blue Meanie, and a rare one of Mrs. Meanie as well. And the fun packs are still available. So go over to Etsy.com and look for Pin for the Win for all your very rare Blue Meanie merchandise.
All right. That was RJ City. Man, how much fun was that?
That was great. That was great, man. I started feeling guilty halfway through. I was like, man, we're going long here. But I was like, hopefully he doesn't have any other appearances.
Well, that's just like, I'm at the end here, and I'm like, well, okay, I know we kind of have to hit our Patreon stuff and our, talk a little bit about our own merch. I'm like, I'm not after a guy sat here for 2.5 hours giving us one of our funniest shows ever. I'm not going to be like, okay, great, RJ. And before we're allowed to let you go, sit for 15 minutes while we put over our own shit. So, no, that was so much fun to have him on the show. Such a good dude. And I hope,
like I said, we normally don't have guests, but I the catalyst for that was like on his show, somebody said it'd be funny if Blue Meanie had a podcast where he could have RJ City on, and then I was like, well, and the way he reacted, I was like, yeah, man, you want to come on? And then that was it,
And that was, I think for me, that was one of the things that made episode 30, like some people might be like, why were you making episode 30? Like this was this giant celebration. Like what a random, episode to do. But there were two. Because
I'm surprised that we had episode 1.
I know. Okay, so there's like a few reasons for that. Number one, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. 30 episodes. We've been doing this for 30 weeks. That's amazing to me. Number two, we had RJ City on, and we knew we were going to have him on for this whole show, and that was going to be a blast to have him, and felt like a bigger episode. But another reason for me, which Meanie, I don't even know if you know this, episode 30 has been one that was kind of when we started, was almost like my goal to get to it and still be having fun and having it feel like it was continuing to grow. And that's because I did 30 episodes of the Apter Chat with Bill Apter. And that was when I continued to help him post for like 7 more episodes when he was doing stuff. But it was when schedules just became so crazy, and I was lucky enough to start doing stuff with FITE, and like I was just at 30 episodes. I was like, I think maybe this is a good time, and I want to kind of do some other stuff that's more more on brand for me, so to speak. So when we started our show and we're rocking and rolling, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, it's crazy that we hadn't done this as long as I did Bill's show, because I felt, and this is again, I love Bill, not knocking that time.
We all love Bill.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for being on that show and the doors that it opened. But it was one of those things that for me, I looked at 30 episodes as like this, like, oh man, we've been doing 10 episodes of Mind of the Meanie. I feel like we've been doing this in the best way for years, Yeah. And I'm like, how is it only, I haven't even done this as long as I've done the After Chat. So now, to have been able to do this as long and be able to look at this and say, like, I really feel like this was an experiment that is panning out and really working out. And I'm so excited. We have so many awesome announcements coming up. And it's looking like, I mean, we're hoping, I'll tease it, we're hoping the beginning of November to have a huge announcement. So it looks like that would be the time frame, and hopefully that'll happen. And if you're a Patreon member, you will get that announcement before everybody else. So you'll definitely want to do that. I want to say thank you and welcome our new Patreon members. We had a handful of new members this week. And I want to say something Meanie and I were talking about. So for everyone who is a Patreon member and everyone who's not a Patreon member, our Patreon is going to change starting December 1st. We are going to have all new tiers with there was a tier joke in there somewhere, but we're gonna have all new tiers. I'm too tired to make the joke. But everything's gonna kind of be reimagined, because when we started this in the beginning, we were kind of like, all right, I don't really know what to do on Patreon. I don't know, and we wanted to be able to make sure everyone's getting a bang for their buck. So part of that is we're gonna have more than just the 2 or 3 tiers. We're gonna have a whole bunch of them. Some of them are gonna be, much higher than we even expect you would want to spend. But if you're going to get stuff that we really can't do for everybody on a lower tier, but that we think is kind of cool. And they're going to start having things where it's like 5 people for this tier. There's only 5 openings. And so all kinds of new things. But if you are currently a Pod Squad Elite member right now, which is the $5 tier, or the Elite Plus, which is the $7 tier, you will be automatically moved to the OG Pod Squad Elite. So if you are a member prior to December 1st, you will be locked in. As long as you don't cancel and get out of it, you will be locked in forever at all of the offerings that you currently get, forevermore. You will be our OG members. So anyone who is on the fence about signing up, I will say that some of the things that you get right now for $7, you will end up having to spend more than $7. We still think it'll be worth it because we'll be throwing other things in there, but you will have to spend more. So now is your time. We are giving you more than enough time and encouraging you to please think about joining now, so that you can get locked in forever. That is just, if we end up where our lowest tier ends up being, $1 million, you will still, that's never going to happen. You will still be locked in to this forever and ever and ever. And that is our way. Because the most important thing to Meanie and myself is that we try and hook all of you up who have supported us from day one. And we still consider this day one. We're still pretty new here. So the last thing we want to do is, thank you so much for your support. But yeah, now you're going to have to pay $25 for the same thing that you were paying before. So that is something that we just kind of wanted to get out there. December 1st is going to be that date. We will give you more and more information as the weeks go on of what these other tiers are going to be. We're still kind of working it out. But yeah, Meanie, anything you want to add there? I feel like I just talked a lot.
No. The most important thing is, if you are with us now, you'll be with us forever at that same tier.
Yeah.
So we're not trying. This isn't like a thing like, let's see how much more we can get out of these folks, But like, if you're here with us at the 5 and 3, 5, 7 level, you're golden. Mm-hmm. But after the December 1st date, things will change. Hopefully for the better. Hopefully to make this podcast bigger.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, because this isn't, people think you just do a podcast and you just throw it up into the ether. There's so much behind the scenes.
It's
we got bills.
It's kind of
we
like
got bills.
It's kind of like a full-time job to do this. And don't get us wrong. I'll just speaking for myself. I love this. I wish this was a full-time job that could provide for my family in the way that my other full-time job does. But it's one of those things where we, everybody kind of gets the score. You guys know what's going on. We want to continue to do more and more and more and more. So we're just kind of trying to make it so that's something that's feasible for us to be able to do. I will say, for instance,
and we're grateful for everybody who's here.
We really are. And the monthly phone calls, we love doing it. But as we've been getting more and more and more members, we looked at it and we said, like, well, if we build up to, 500 Patreon members, we literally don't have enough time in the month for Meanie and I to make these minimum 5-minute phone calls to that many Patreon members. So that's where it starts to become something where that's going to be a slightly higher tier to get that. And it's going to be limited to a certain number of people to be able to sign up for that tier. But again, if you are a member prior to December 1st, you're locked in. You will be getting that phone call. So if 500 of you want to sign up now, I guess we're screwed because we are going to have to call you. So that's the encouragement. Screw us as hard as you can. Join the Patreon before December 1st. But we have always appreciated everyone, from the people who download this for free, the people who go to our YouTube channel, follow us on social media at Mind of the Meanie. We appreciate you more than you will ever know. And then all the way to every tier on Patreon. We don't appreciate anybody more for paying more money. I guess depends on how much. If you really start giving us a lot of money, we might start appreciating you even more. Like, if you're just randomly PayPaling us like $200 a week, like, I'm going to appreciate you a lot more than maybe other people. But no, we appreciate you guys so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess with that being said, we'll start kind of winding down here. Meanie, anything else you want to say?
No, it's been a great show. Like I said, this is our 30th episode. I'm surprised I'm grateful we did one. Yeah. I'm grateful we made it to 10 and made it to 20 and make it to 30. Like I said, we're in this for the long haul. I have no other plans. This is my, other than wrestling, this is my, I had my wrestling career, and this is my new career. And I want to be able to, have this platform to interact with everybody and talk about the things we love and, stuff like that, and have our own little community, not, Jim Jones, not in a Jim Jones kind of way, but, just, have a community where, like-minded people get along and have fun and, stuff like that, and I'm grateful for everybody who's here. Whether you listen, download every week for free, or you're part of the, the Patreon. Everybody's important, just like a wrestling show. Everybody from, the booker to the people selling the popcorn are all important. You're all important to us, because without you, we're just two guys Skyping.
Yep.
So, no, seriously, thank you so much. I wish I could. There was like a fancier word I could think to describe how I feel, but I feel very fortunate to have come this far in this amount of time and have this many followers and this people reaching out and stuff like that. So thank you for supporting us. Please spread the word. Let others know that we exist, and let's grow this thing to where it's like Fight Club, where we see each other out in the wild and go,
yep, a wink,
wink,
yeah, definitely.
Because, dude, I've had like people come up to me like we were in ShopRite one day and somebody's like, "Oh, get ready for your podcast." I'm like, "Oh, he knows."
It's really cool, and one day this world is going to go back to some form of normal, and we've got so many plans of what we want to do, and we want to just be able to continue to hopefully entertain you every week. Meanie talked about how this is his thing outside of wrestling. This is his career. This is what he wants to do, and that was something we talked about very early on. And I told you, I said, I'm in it as long as you'll have me. I'm here to do this, And part
I
of
am
it
nothing
is
without you.
What's that?
I am nothing without you.
Oh, and I am absolutely nothing without you. And we are nothing without the Pod Squad. So join us again next Monday. Follow us on social media at Mind of the Meanie across all boards. He is at Blue Meanie BWO. I'm at So Says Shernoff. Check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Mind of the Meanie, our YouTube.com/Mind of the Meanie, and go to ProWrestlingTees.com/Mind of the Meanie /Blue Meanie /So Says Shernoff, and of course, collarandelbowbrand.com, promo code Meanie. That is about all I have to say, and our music's running out, so I guess I will say join us again next Monday for another trip into the mind of the Meanie.
Blue World